I'll text it. It's
Call the work session to order for the Morrow County Commission, and this work session is outsourcing rules, and the purpose of this work session is to understand better the land conservation development solar siting rules, compare the French County solar siting standards, section 38, new standards, section 44, and Morrow County staff to implementation. When time permits, the work session will also include a brief presentation and discussion about the new Goal 5 standards. Members of the public, landowners, agencies, and representatives of the development community are welcome to participate in this informal discussion. As a note, the work session will not determine the output in the GIS mapping analysis in the specific project illustrate how to do siting standard for the water. So we're going to have a little introduction, everybody to move it on. So I'm going to turn it over to Tamara, our planner, and planner who's going to take the meeting and run it from there. So Jeff
Reynolds, County Commissioner.
Dave Sykes,
Gus Peterson, Morrow County Commissioner.
Jim Bagley, Principal Planner.
Tamara Mabbott, Planning Director.
Elaine Albridge, a partner with Davis Drake Tremaine.
Oh, Valerie Ballard, Morrow County.
Matt Jensen, County Administrator, Morrow County.
Mouthful, Matt Hutchinson, Emanate Energy. And Brian Walls with Emanate Energy.
Olivia Dykeman, Emanate Energy.
you guys in the back, just let everybody know.
Lindsay Summers with Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. Hamilton.
Steve Cherry, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, Governor.
Jeremy Thompson, I'm our Energy Program Coordinator for the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Larry Lutzer, Extension Soil Scientist, Morrow County, Oregon State University. Glad to be here today.
Okay. Okay, Kevin.
Morrow County Finance Director.
And then on Zoom, could Stephen, is that Stephen with the plan?
Yeah, Stephen Ressick's Morrow County GIS analyst.
All right, Barrett,
Derek
This is with-
Thorson with the East Oregonian.
okay. And who's there from Korea?
Mike, is that you, Mike?
He's on mute. Oh, there he goes.
Yes, hi there, Mike MacArthur, Community Renewable Energy Association.
Okay, Kevin,
Yeah, hi, Kevin Gray from
Gray.
County Grain Growers.
okay, thank you, everybody. With that, then,
And MC planning is me because Valerie's going to share it with me. So we are waiting for John Jennings.
There's Cameron.
Oh, great. Okay. Cameron, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, my apologies. My name is Cameron Krebs, joining the meeting this afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity to participate.
And Cameron told me the other day he was weaning baby lamb, so that was more important. I totally get it. So.
Actually, the Starlink didn't connect, so I had to, that's why I'm late, so my deepest apologies.
Not a problem. Great to have you. And we are expecting John Jennings, who was the lead staff from DLCD on the Solar Rec, the Rural Advisory Committee, and he's not here. So if folks in the audience, please sign in if you haven't already. I have an outline for the solar rule portion of the meeting, and then the board has a couple of other items after us. We're hoping like an hour and a half, just so you have an idea of how much time we might be here. I think we can do all of that. Elaine's got this memorized, except we keep finding pieces that we're not sure about. So it goes back and forth a little bit. And then there's copies of the PowerPoint slides. The memo I presented to the board a couple weeks ago that does a high level summary and then a table. So, well, John is not here, but we'll just start. And so I need to screen share. Oh, I went to slideshow too quick. Okay. Hold on. I will get to Zoom. I can share now. This is my thing. Yeah.
Go. So let me do that. I really need to edit, but one slideshow.
And John's joining right now.
Is it? Okay.
There we go. This looks wonky on my end.
Okay.
Fine up here.
Oh, okay.
There's.
Right.
Hey, John, we see you. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, guys, sorry I'm late. I'm John Jennings. I'm the community services specialist for DLCD. Trying to turn my camera on. Here we go. And was a lead staff in the development of these administrative rules for solar in Eastern Oregon.
Okay. And then I see Dugan join. Do you want to introduce yourself, Dugan?
Hey everybody, Dugan with Pine Gate Renewables. We are a solar and storage developer out of Asheville, North Carolina, but have been in Oregon for about, oh my God, maybe 7 years now. But I've secured a permit for a very large project in Morrow County, the Sunstone Solar Project. But I was also representing large scale utility solar on the solar site, Eastern Oregon solar siting rack process that John helped run. So that was kind of my role in that process.
So Elaine and John and I have not rehearsed this, but I think we can get through it pretty quickly.
Let's see. Yep. This one made a new. I haven't done it.
Oh, there we go. So here's.
I can do this.
Okay.
Hello, Elaine Aldrich. I'm a land use attorney and I've been practicing throughout Oregon with renewable energy for quite a while now, and nice to see some of you again. Thanks for having me today. I also was a member of the RAC for DLCD solar siting RAC and participated in how many meetings did we have, John? It was a doozy.
Endless amount.
Yeah, an endless amount. So the result of that RAC and rulemaking is what we're presenting here today. The existing DLCD rule, as we talked about in the introduction, is subpart 38, and then the new DLCD rules are what we are kind of calling the lower conflict siting rules. There's two pathways that were created by these rules. One is section 44, which is a new pathway for Eastern Oregon solar sites, sort of an add-on complementary to section 38 that allows some projects to avoid goal 3 exceptions if they target lower conflict sites. The second is sort of a new pathway, which is a goal 5 resource program. This is something different, similar to like your goal 5 program that you might have for aggregate mining. This is a goal 5 program to inventory lands that you think might hold a significant solar resource and therefore allow projects to go a bit faster and cite larger projects without goal 3 exceptions if they meet certain mitigation requirements.
And we're going to prompt through these, and if you want to stop or go back, we can do that. I think there's good information there, so I think this is still yours.
Yeah. So one of the things with the lower conflict siting rules, the objective was to try to encourage development in areas where there was the least amount of conflict possible, and if that was and the reward for that was that you could avoid goal 3 exceptions up to a certain amount of acres. These new DLCD rules only impact projects that can be cited locally. They do not directly affect projects that would go through the state siting council.
Except if it goes through the state, they have to implement whatever local governments adopted.
Yeah.
Okay. I was kind of nervous to correct Elaine. She's the. Just to So yeah, that bar off to the left, those are the existing pieces we have in our EFU section 3.010. So if it's high value farmland, at the local level, you can permit it to 12 acres. If it's arable, 20 acres. If it's non-arable, it's 320. And two of our chair and Commissioner Winholtz, vice chair, have spent 10 and 20 years on the planning commission, so they can appreciate this process. Commissioner Peterson is a quick study and coming up to speed. The definitions for purposes of solar, the definitions of farmland, arable, non-arable, and high value are different and unique from all those other things you learned all those. So that isn't really changing with this process. But again, it's not, high value is more than just class 1 and 2 soil.
That's right. So, let's see on the slide for a second.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things, and John, jump in here, but as a matter of policy, what DLCD was driving for and creating sort of these two new permitting tracks was different incentives. So the goal 5 program is sort of the larger programmatic approach to giving counties greater jurisdiction and flexibility to site solar projects in lower conflict sites. There are different trade-offs that we're going to talk about as a part of that program. And that is why, though, you see the larger acreage thresholds. So meaning that projects who go through the Goal 5 program are ideally intended to be more balanced on lower conflict sites and offer the benefits that are the trade-off for not having to go through the Goal 3 exception process. And so there was a policy choice there that the Goal 3 acreage thresholds under the program would be essentially any project the county could permit up to the FSEC jurisdictional threshold. So it's like the maximum amount of your jurisdiction. And that's sort of we see as a positive part of the program. On the other side, you have the new Division 44 pathway, and there was a lot of discussion within the RAC about why propose acreage thresholds under Division 44 that or subpart 44 that are different than the program. And this was the thinking was that there are less robust sort of measures around the mitigation in this pathway, and therefore the acres should be lower. So there was some relief from the 38 acres, but not to the extent that you see in the Goal 5 program.
John, did you want to add to that?
Well, I thank you. I just want to again thank you guys for putting this together, and I would offer just one or two observations to kind of complement Elaine's good explanations there. First of all, the high value farmland piece is with regards to applicability under this opportunity. It's a pretty narrow subset. I mean, there is some potential high value farmland, but not very much. I mean, that really is going to be lands that were lost their irrigation due to some regulatory circumstance, but still remain technically considered high value farmland. So it's not too much. And then as has been pointed out, there's a couple different processes or pathways. The direct application in section 44 is direct, right? You're responding to an application that's brought to you, and you process it and make a decision. Whereas the potential opportunity under Division 23, the Goal 5, is you're going through establishing a local program, sort of a little more due consideration of planning and community outreach and preparation, I suppose, for those neighborhoods to think about what they like and might want to avoid, and how that can be folded into a local program and accounted for. And just finally tie this off, as was pointed out, right? There's these acreage thresholds are set in statute, and so it wasn't a matter of LCDC choosing one or another. What they did do was to choose, in some circumstances, the maximum size that could be subject to county jurisdiction. So I don't know, hopefully that makes sense, but thanks, guys.
Yeah, and that ORS 469 is Department of Energy, that's embedded in their program. So again, that acreage threshold did not change. So If you recall, one of the letters that, or I think the only letter Morrow County submitted during the RAC process was, we really didn't like the opt-out provision, but we didn't prevail on that. And we wanted the local siting threshold to be higher, and we didn't prevail on that either. But so this is what we ended up with. And just for context, I know John joined a little bit late, but it wasn't just John and some of his colleagues sitting around twiddling their thumbs. The legislature in 23 said, 23, okay, said, we want the department to promulgate new rules and work with the industry and a large group of stakeholders that for a variety of reasons. And the state's objective is to streamline the process for siting solar. So the jury's still out on whether or not we think if streamlining means it's more complicated than we want, but if anyway, that was sort of a funny thing. So
Thank you, Tamara. If it's okay, I just follow up on that just a little bit, right? So that was House Bill 3409 and directed LCDC to take certain action and to do so by July 1st, 2025. And these rules were adopted in June 26th. So we made it. And we were directed to have a very broad rules advisory committee of a bunch of different interests and a bunch of different stakeholders representing different values, and also to consider a number of things, which we did our best to reflect in the rule, which is to really kind of try to find opportunities and reduce conflict, right? And opportunities, I think, are in one way represented by understanding what a typical and successful solar development needs, as well as some other things that we might try to stay away from or otherwise offset, which are agricultural lands, wildlife habitat, cultural historical resources, one or two other things. Those are kind of the big three. So we had our work kind of charted for us by the legislature, and really did our best to follow that to the extent that was available for us.
yeah, that's helpful. And that's true. I didn't mean to oversimplify it, John. One of the messages I heard in the field working primarily with the development community is the challenge of the goal-free exception process. That's to me the elephant in the room, because there's a lot of time and energy and resources that go into these applications, and an exception of any sort is a gamble. And I don't want to suss out how that worked within the individual projects, but at some point in time, we could talk about that. It looks like Mike has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Tamara. Just to add to the history piece that you're doing now, there were discussions that went on beginning in, I think, 2022, that some of us, John, Elaine, and I were involved with. Started out with a Zoom call with 100 people at one point, and Dugan was involved in this too, which what led a long process. I think there were maybe 6 or 8 of us left at the end, still discussing what was possible. The goal 5 was where we landed. At that point, that there might be a path there, and then what you see now is the formal legislative directive to do this. So this has been a long time in the making, and the issue, I think, that really underlies this is the state's handed us two competing sets of goals. One is protect ag and forest land, and the other is to develop renewable energy. So here we go, counties, you figure it out.
I think that's really fair. Thanks, Mike. That's a great. I appreciate you raising your hand on that. Let's see. Okay, so I'll take the next slide. This is just another way of summarizing what we talked about 2 weeks ago at the Board of Commissioners meeting. So there are these new rules that become effective January 1 and of 2026. If the county does nothing, then section 44 is in place. But we can, the county also has the option to continue using section 38. Elaine and I have had a couple conversations. That's just the two of us. I think my recommendation, at least at this point, until we know more, is to to opt in and to say, yes, we'll use 44, opt in or opt out or not opt out, however you want to use the double negative. So that we have both sets of standards, because the existing section 38 standards provides a little bit more flexibility for some of the smaller projects. And then 44. And then if the board is inclined, we can pursue the goal 5 piece. But there's nothing quick about that new option, goal 5. As you know, from even permitting an aggregate site, it's a pretty detailed process. That would typically be a county-wide process. So we'd say, let's do this really massive technical mapping exercise of the resources in the county, back out those high conflict areas that have been mentioned, and then look at areas that could be developed. Or it could be done on a case-by-case basis. So that's keep that in mind. At the end of the day today, you might want to tell me which option you think you want to pursue. That's kind of the same. Yeah, John already said that. Okay, so do you want to take this?
Sure.
Okay.
So part of these rules, whether you're in 44 or the Goal 5 program, require a screening test. So not all land can qualify for either of these permitting pathways. So the first step is to look at whether the land meets these 3 factors. It has to do with slope, solar capacity, and then be predominantly within 10 miles of a 69 kV or greater transmission line. That was one of the key factor that the RAP discussed, is what was the right distance to transmission, recognizing that proximity to transmission and decreasing the length of gen-tie lines is for lower conflict siting.
And when we're finished with this piece, Stephen's on the line, or Stephen Essex, our GIS analyst, and he's going to illustrate a couple of those features. He doesn't have access to all of this information, but he's just going to show you, give you a taste for what it looks like. And one of the challenges is we simply don't have maps of all the transmission lines for good reasons. Primarily for security reasons, the utilities don't want to share the location of transmission lines. So that'll be a tricky piece to get. Stephen will tell you that the utility scale capacity factor, our whole county counts. Everything's 19% or greater. So that's a plus for
Check
us.
the box on that.
Yeah, check the box on that. Yeah.
Yeah, almost all of Eastern Oregon is.
Oh, okay. Thanks, John. Okay. I thought we were special.
You still are special.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the second step in the screening process is, does the project, whether it be within a site under 44 or in an area under Goal 5 program, avoid important resource areas? So these this list of resource areas are those resources that the RAC debated and came to this list and was recommended to LCDC of that these are, important resource areas across a range from cultural to habitat to high value farmland that were important from the state's perspective to protect as a matter of policy. So these, I just shorthand call these no-go areas.
Yeah. Okay.
And that includes, sage-grouse habitat, priority wildlife connectivity areas, high use and very high use migration corridors, ODF&W habitat category 1, urban reserve areas, class 1 and 2 soils, high value farmlands, unless they fall within the exception of having inability to use their water rights. And then areas where you can't avoid significant impacts to historic, cultural, or archaeological resources. And then just sort of a limited application as the Metolius area of critical state concern.
But obviously Metolius wouldn't apply to us. We have no urban reserves. And we don't have any significant sage-grouse lakes.
No significant sage grass and very little migration corridor.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
And then this is just a slide for reference. These are the relevant high-value farmland definitions. These definitions are the same from 38 to 44 to the Goal 5 program. So these rules do not affect really the underlying high-value farmland definition used for solar siting. One of the issues that came up in discussion in the RAC was this issue around the extent of the Columbia Valley AVA throughout Morrow County. There are lots of areas, maybe Stephen will bring this up in the mapping, but there are considerable extent of areas within Morrow County that meet the slope and aspect to fall within the Columbia Valley AVA, even though it has, you know, lower NRCS class soils like 6 and 7, 4, 5, 6, 7, even some 8. So by the very fact that it falls within this overlay, it elevates it up to high value farmland, and as a consequence, oftentimes gets tipped to the FSEC jurisdiction, and also gets stuck having to take a goal 3 exception, even under these 44 and goal 3 program or goal 5 program, which is intended to offer relief. So that's an issue that was not fixed by these rules.
Just a anecdote, the AVA designation is a very non-scientific designation. It was really Larry might know more about it, but it was the marketing folks from the wine industry who said, we want to designate an AVA and use it for marketing purposes. But it has a real meaningful effect now in a lot of things, particularly in land use. So that might be something later in a subsequent rulemaking effort or legislative effort. Not just Morrow County, but other entities as well might want to take a look at what that means.
Tamara, we have a map that we can share if we got up the AVA.
Stephen will have it too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but if you want to, you have a print copy?
Matt can share it.
Okay.
It's up in space. Yep.
Oh, excellent. I just teed up Stephen. He'll show it up here too. So, did you want to talk about?
Sure,
Okay.
but before we move on, any questions sort of about the policy directive for these new rules or the screening and no-go areas? Screening tests and no-go areas, okay.
I guess, yeah, so we mentioned that high use wildlife migration corridors, and we don't have any significant sage grouse habitat. Do we have any priority wildlife connectivity areas or any category 1 habitat that would be?
Yeah, I can talk a bit on that. Sorry, Lindsay Summers. So we do have priority wildlife connectivity areas. So I provided Tamara with a GIS layer. I brought maps and left them in my car, sorry, but they're available online. And so I wouldn't call these no-go areas. They are areas that, if you have 3 designations, there's habitat and then connecting habitat and then transportation mitigation opportunities. So these areas are areas that provide the best quality habitat for wildlife in Oregon and the best connecting habitat. So what you're going to see on those maps are a lot of connectors, and that may not be quality wildlife habitat, but it's the most permeable habitat between existing patches. So what we're thinking of doing is look at those on a site-by-site basis, right? So if a project comes up within a priority wildlife connectivity area, maybe we'll give it additional review. Do a site visit, realize that it doesn't provide that quality habitat, or if it does, avoid impacts or mitigate those impacts.
Okay.
And as far as category 1 habitat, we do, so that would be occupied Washington ground squirrel habitat. And that's typically found during surveys prior to project construction or during the consulting phase.
We don't have a layer, if you will, of that habitat. We obtain that information on a case-by-case basis when applications are submitted.
So how would that work for a goal 5 solar program? Because as I understand it, we would be assessing everything and then we'd say, this is where our go areas are and this is our no-go areas. Would that mean it's a go area until we look at it more closely?
It could be.
Could be, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It may pass through the screening test, but then and be designated and then qualify, and then you might designate it as significant solar resource area. But a project might come in and see that it has one of these no-go areas that can't be mitigated, and so that it couldn't be used then.
Okay.
Or they could provide information to say, actually, you didn't have all the information, right? And they could move forward with it.
Okay.
John, did you want to share something?
Oh, just real quick follow-up, and I want to appreciate the questions and the level of interest. And it's understood, right? There are features here that are really not mappable because they're not mapped, and that they will need to be assessed and identified in the context of a site-specific proposal. So it's not gonna be incumbent on the county to come up with stuff that isn't already available. The PWCA's, priority wildlife connectivity areas, yeah, there's a bunch of them. But as Lane points out, that can be evaluated on the ground to really figure out is this a big deal or not. And if you look at those, if you were to have a chance to look at those, you'll see a trend, and a lot of those areas are like along a stream corridor or a riparian corridor or a canyon or a draw that probably aren't real conducive to development type anyway. I think there's one kind of the northwest of Dugan's project. So they're out there, but again, they may not be, even if there were no-go areas, they may not have a chilling effect on a good project being able to move forward.
Yeah, okay. Let's get on. Oh, who's got this slide? Relevant high value farmland definitions.
We talked through that.
Yeah, we already did that. Okay. Solar sites. Okay. This is sort of both of our slides.
Yeah. This is the 44, section 44 pathway, permitting pathway. This is a project would come apply to you for conditional use permit under section 44. And so this is a quick summary of the siting standards that the county would be looking to apply to this type of project to see, one, if the project was approvable as a conditional use, and two, whether the project offered enough mitigation and used lower conflict sites to warrant relief under the goal 3 exception threshold.
So for this, Elaine, an application would come to us and show that they've met the screening test.
Correct.
And then we'd apply these criteria plus the other criteria.
Correct.
In 30 yeah.
An application under this pathway would be presented that shows that the project site qualifies under the screening test and avoids the important resource areas or otherwise demonstrates that any potential impact can be mitigated in consultation with ODFW. And then the third part of the application would demonstrate that these siting standards are met. And these are sort of the 3 or 4 big ones that we're going to walk through in section 44 is this new 2-mile cumulative impacts test. If a project is located on high value or arable land, the new rules expand the extent of this test. So there's a bit of a new difference between 44 and 38 with respect to this standard. The next standard is that the project satisfies the agricultural mitigation requirements under Division 23. You'll see that there's quite a bit of cross-reference between Division 33 rules for 44 and then the Goal 5 program, because it essentially was like the mitigation concepts were developed in the Goal 5 program rule and then imported into the 44 CUP pathway. So projects under this pathway have to meet the agricultural mitigation requirement, and there's a whole new formula for how you calculate ag mitigation, and John has a slide on that a little bit later. The next component is there's a new requirement for community benefits mitigation. This is a new concept also that's not in 38. This requires for a direct payment to offer community benefits to the county or other qualifying entity. There are other ways to satisfy this. You could do power supply for EMS during power outage, using a BESS or other methods, or creating a microgrid that addresses identified community needs. So the idea here was to try to allow projects going through the 44 pathway some flexibility for figuring out what might be a good community benefits program under this new siting standard. You'll notice that under the Goal 5 program that we're going to talk about, the agricultural mitigation options and the community benefit mitigation options are a little more flexible. And that was intentional to give the county some more discretion through the Goal 5 program to sort of shape and say what they want to see for ag mitigation and community benefits. So that's kind of a compare contrast. And then you'll see throughout, there's an obligation to avoid or mitigate for significant adverse impacts to historic, cultural, and archaeological resources. And then these are the other,
standards in the conditional use.
you want to talk about temporary workforce housing at all? Or that's
Yeah, so FSEC has traditional, well, it's one of their standards is, that's in the, can't remember what appendix that's in, but it's the community impacts. They have required, I don't know that it's been a really robust analysis that FSEC requires that an applicant show the impact to the local workforce housing. I don't want to call it perfunctory, but it might sort of be, because a lot of the applications we've seen come through, they'll do an analysis of for sale and for rent housing and even temporary RV parking. And they just kind of come up with some wild numbers. And I don't know that this the county's ability would be any greater to require a workforce housing plan. But at least it's a tool that the county, particularly for in a real housing crunch, it's a tool the county could require as part of a CUP application.
Yeah. Good, it's a good new tool for
Yeah, a new tool,
yeah.
for local.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Oh, so then a project under these new rules would also have to meet all of those standards A through D in our existing section 38. And remember, the incentive for doing that would be that you're still, if you're in the industry, I'm going to oversimplify. Your target really is to try to permit your projects locally. So you do all these things, you still work with the local government. It still is a much more streamlined and less expensive process. And we like working with developers. So yeah, what's the avoided arable soil? Oh, yeah. And it also requires that avoid those arable soils, which aren't the high value, they're the other soils, but there's a few exceptions. So if it's on a tract that has the tract's non-arable soil significantly reduces the project's ability to operate. And I think there's probably plenty of cases where that argument could be made or maybe not. And that the proposed site is better suited to allow continuation of farm operations on the tract. So an individual applicant would have to provide some pretty detailed information about why they want to use some arable soils.
So if I was a developer, then I might just make my project boundary just around the arable soils, and then I have nowhere in the project's boundaries to put it, and then I would meet that criterion.
Well, you would then be, your threshold for local would still be pretty low. So under our existing standards, that would limit you to a 20-acre project. If we were to adopt the new 44 standards, if you choose to locate on arable soils and you want the county to issue the permit, you'd still be limited to 1,280 acres.
I guess, how does the state find arable soils? Maybe they define it differently than I do, because that seems like it would
I'm
be most
guessing-
Morrow County.
It's predominantly cultivated, or if not cultivated, comprised of arable soils, which are typically class 3 and 4.
And irrigated.
Yeah.
Most of our good
Oh, yeah.
dry land soils in Morrow County are class 3 soils.
Yeah, and that, yes, and that would be, those would be considered arable.
That's helpful. Thanks, Larry.
Yeah.
And then the last piece, that's not in our local code, but it's something we're pretty familiar with. An application would have to show, coordinate with Campeche out of Whidbey Island for the military airspace, because the glint and glare does have an effect on training pilots or any sort of flights. Anything else? Oh, okay, John. Yeah.
So again, just a couple comments, just real quickly, The habitat stuff, I think developers are real familiar with working with that right now. Counties probably are too. The workforce housing was viewed as something that was important to get a sense, get a sense that we're going to have a large workforce descending upon a small community. We'd like to have have an idea where they might go. The 38H and H2G, those are really we would consider standards with regard. They have to do with things like soil erosion and soil compaction and noxious weeds and those sorts of things. The avoiding arable soils, I think, really should boil down to if put the project on the least lowest quality land if you can. And as Cameron pointed out, there may be instances when you can't. But at least let's give it a try. And then the military airspace thing that's been pretty important to the Department of Defense. Again, you guys have a lot of experience in that. They were very, very clear throughout this entire process. They're not interested in stopping projects, but what they would really like to have is communication early and often, and kind of understand what might happen, and really not put their pilots in a position where they might get caught flat-footed because they don't know something's going to be there. Again, I think that's something that's contributory, but I don't. It's not supposed to be a deal breaker by any means.
Yeah, something that projects are doing right now, even though it's not required, but for consultation. Okay.
Let's go to the next one. Okay, now we're going to talk about the Goal 5 significant resource areas.
Okay. The Goal 5 program. So the rules are very specific about the nature of the process the county would undertake for processing the PAPA and creating the Goal 5 program.
And the PAPA, for folks who don't know, that's any post acknowledgement plan amendment. So any code plan map amendment, that's the PAPA process.
So it would involve an amendment to your comprehensive plan and probably your zoning ordinance if you were going to incorporate the
Overlay zone, yeah.
overlay zone into it. So it's a pretty robust project. And the rules require a certain number of meetings, public engagement, and notification and outreach. So that process is prescribed with the intention of promoting robust consideration of what land to include in as significant solar resource areas. The same test applies that land must meet the 3 screening factors in order to be considered for the inventory and any other factors that the county determines appropriate.
So that bottom part is to be significant. So if you recall, you compare it to aggregate. If you want to be a significant site, you have to have 500,000 tons. And it has to meet ODOT specifications in a nutshell. And then you do this whole EC analysis, energy, social, economic, and environmental analysis. That's all captured in a whole new administrative rule, only applies to to solar projects. So the topographic slope has to be less than 15%. Solar capacity, we now know most of Eastern Oregon is there. And then it has to be within 10 miles of a 69 kV or larger transmission line. And, we felt some of the impacts of multiple transmission lines for other development. So that's not anything new. I didn't listen in on those parts of the discussion. And then other suitable factors the county determines appropriate. So if we were to implement 44, we can add to that, correct?
That's right.
Would then FSEC have to honor what we added to it? But only if we made a case that it was part of protection of a statewide planning goal? Maybe, yeah, okay. We're not gonna beat up on anybody today, so, okay.
So I have a question, just, so the specific public meeting and hearing requirement, what is the timeline? Because I imagine, there's a certain, we would have to begin.
Did the timeline change underneath these?
So how would that look?
I was just asking Elaine, I don't think anything in this rule, or John, if the timeline changed. So once we have there's really no timeline for a PAPA process is a legislative process.
Right.
Unless if it's for an individual property, then it's kind of a hybrid legislative quasi-judicial because it applies only to a piece of property or a tract, whatever your project is. It might be 5 or 15 tax lots, but So it would be the same, 150 days if it was quasi judicial, but then it really wouldn't be if it would be 150 days for, applying the section 44 or the section 38. But really not for the goal 5 process. The idea is that this is, you sit back, you do some mapping and technical analyses, and you go through a robust public involvement process.
I guess
Yeah,
I was
that's
asking,
right, Cameron. Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, what is the timeline look for that robust public
Oh, like
engagement
how fast?
process?
Oh, how fast could you do it in 4 months?
Yeah, how fast could
you do
this
You know.
program
months?
be pursued? That's more so what I.
Yeah.
So from a staff perspective, we could do it in a couple of months. If we have all the data. The challenge from my perspective, and you'll hear from Stephen in a few minutes, we don't know where those transmission lines are. So if we were to look at a goal 5 program, identify significant resources countywide, just to get to that public involvement process is that's going to take us, I would say, no less than a year, maybe longer, unless the industry ponies up and provides all those data layers, and including the agencies, which have been really great about sharing the data layers they have. A data layer nobody has, unless you actually do a walking survey, are the cultural archaeological resources, because those really only come about on a case by case basis.
Yeah, and I think, John, you've got your hand up, and I'm hoping you're gonna talk about the extent of the analysis that the county has to do for the screening versus what an applicant would be obligated to prove up from a resource avoidance on an application under the Goal 5 program.
So yeah, it it's really very similar to what would be under the direct application in Division 44, so excuse me, Section 44. Right, the things that are unable to be mapped because there's no mapping, that needs to be furnished. So what category, what ODF and W habitat category is it, for instance, and that needs to be proven by the applicant in coordination with ODF and W. The historical stuff, same type of thing. Now there may be instances where there are county inventories thing, where there's Oregon Trail ruts or something like that. But there could be other things out there that we just won't know until there's a pedestrian level survey or some other site specific survey. So we tried to do is put this together in a way that we can use what we have, what we know, but not put the county on the hook for spending resources to develop new data, new information for things that are hard to find, and that's kind of consistent, I believe, with how the larger projects move forward at the state siting level.
And I think what John was just describing, we could get to that level of data on an individual project basis. I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around how the county would do a goal 5 analysis for the entire county. So I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking it, but it's beyond what I can think about doing.
Yeah.
Okay, big picture. Whose slide was this?
This was just a quick slide about the Goal 5 program. Within the Goal 5 program itself, there are sort of 2 permitting pathways. One is a non-mitigated project and the other is a mitigated project under the program. We won't go into this in too much detail. It's just intended to note that the program is more flexible and offers the county and the applicant more ways to develop a project that has lower conflict impacts and also has more creative mitigation, I'll say. So,
but again, it seems more feasible to do on a project by project basis.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's really like I keep thinking, going back to the aggregate Goal 5 mining. So it's like you've got aggregate sites inventoried in your comp plan, they're mapped. But it's up to the applicant when they come in with an application to demonstrate that they can meet your Goal 5 program requirements
That's
for
right.
that site, right? And so I kind of think of it that way.
Or especially if they want to add a new site.
Yeah.
This is.
We can kind of, I think, skip through this. This is more just what the criteria are for these two types of permitting pathways under the program itself. So similar but different than 44.
Yeah, I need to study that myself more. Okay.
And
this.
so I think the first one is just, this is a non-mitigated project. So if your site fits in these criteria, then you are not obligated to provide any mitigation. So no ag mitigation or community benefits. I think if Stephen and Dugan show you mapping, the number of sites that would fit in this test is very, very small, if it's not existent. Just side commentary. The mitigated projects are probably the more likely pathway. Again, the projects have to fall within these categories and then provide the required mitigation for all of the resources. And there are two ways to provide ag mitigation. The first one is only available under the Goal 5 program, and the second one is available to projects that would proceed under 44 or the Goal 5 program if that's what the county wanted to adopt. Ag mitigation under the second pathway is prescribed by rule, and there is a ag mitigation methodology in the rule itself for how to calculate required mitigation for cultivated ag and livestock grazing. I don't know, John, if you were going to go into this. This is very complicated and it's a bit untested to know, whether a project can carry the costs of mitigation under this methodology.
And it's
There's
not the mitigation that we saw with the one project where we have an ag mitigation program. They took that and created their own. So we don't have that flexibility any longer, except under 38, I guess we could. Yeah. Go ahead, John, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I know I keep butting in. I apologize for that. I'm not trying to be rude, I promise you.
No, you're good.
Yeah, so we, and I don't think it's any secret, it shouldn't be, that it was the work that Morrow County did with Pine Gate that you really elevated the realization that agricultural mitigation in certain circumstances, could be a way to show that if everything made sense and lined up, right? And so we kind of emulated that. We came up with a more or less straightforward methodology. It takes a little bit, right? But I mean, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I guarantee you. And it was really put together by a participant we had with a kind of a background in agricultural economics, and it attempts to feature basically the size of the project and the soil types and the duration of the power purchase agreement, and the better the quality of the farmland, the greater and larger, of course, the greater your duty is going to be. I will say I did try to calc it out on the Sunstone site. I didn't have all the data for really where that was and where that wasn't. I mean, I know the site, but I know there's different pieces in there. Anyway, I tried to run it through, and it was similar. And we came up with, I think we were a little bit, I think the numbers I came up with were a little south of where that discussion landed, but it was in the ballpark. And so I think that was interesting that we could come up with a way that hopefully when folks get the hang of it, doesn't take an enormous amount of effort to run through, doesn't require hiring a professional economist to do, and results in, again, reducing conflict through reducing risk and allowing folks to feel better about these projects, and they maybe they would have otherwise. It'd be more welcoming, and be more excited about it. So anyway, I'll stop there. But that's our hope. And this is one instance where we did make a distinction between categories of rangeland. That's based on the really the herbaceous forage arrangement. I think that 300 pounds an acre, you guys probably there in the room knows better than me, but I think that would probably equate to something, rangeland is somewhere between 5 to 7 acres per AUM. I may be getting out over my skis on that, but it's pretty decent rangeland. And the relative value of crop production versus livestock production is accounted for. And so it's going to be lower. It's going to be quite a little bit lower, given the kind of the expected return on investment there.
But from maybe my own edification, the mitigation is to mitigate one of the standards that an individual project may not meet. The ag mitigation program we have was voluntary by the applicant who said, look, we realize 10,000 acres being removed from primarily dryland wheat production does have an effect on the economy, the agricultural economy. And so they hired Eco Northwest and they did this study. And it was nice to know that John ran numbers and came up with something pretty similar. But the purpose of the example that we have was in part to meet that goal 3 exception criteria. This would be different. This would be to meet one of those siting standards.
This would be to offset the requirement for the goal 3 exception.
Oh, it still would be to
So it's
offset
still
the
kind of
requirement.
meant to
Okay,
correlate
okay.
to that.
That's
Yeah.
good to know.
And the ag mitigation methodology worksheet is in the back of this rules. You're curious.
Jump in real quick here, also before I forget,
Yeah.
and say we did. Tamara's comments triggered my recollection, and something I wanted to get across was that we've also kind of tied ag mitigation to the ability to more simply satisfy what is usually a very highly discretionary and somewhat complicated test, longstanding test is the farmer, basically we call the farm and forest compatibility test. And so we've written this. Usually there's been a lot of case law devoted to that and rulemaking over the years. And again, it can be very discretionary and confusing. We've tried to level things out to say that if an applicant meets their responsibilities based on the factor we talked about earlier, the soil compaction, soil erosion, weeds, and accomplish agricultural mitigation if it's required, then the county can find that test has been satisfied. I mean, that's a lot of words, and I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but it's our hope that creates a more smooth pathway while honoring the commission's duty under the statute. So I'll just stop with that.
All right, that's helpful, John. This is more on the mitigation requirements.
Yes, these are the other 2 main categories of mitigation. Very similar under the Goal 5 program and the 44 program, except the county has a bit more flexibility under community benefits to develop, to work with the applicant to develop a program that it wants to see, rather than just a strict $1 per megawatt amount.
And does the rule have any restrictions on how the county can use the community benefits fund, the money that might come from community benefits?
It talks more about that, it helps improve the community's social health, well-being and functioning. So it's
Pretty flexible, as opposed to if the program we have was more narrowly this time.
I don't think
Go
it's
ahead,
as prescriptive.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as prescriptive as was experienced in the FSEC proceeding. But yeah, I mean, the hope is that it's going to help. It's going to help make things easier for the other agricultural producers. And I just really want to take a second and say that Elaine pointed this out, right? There's community benefits, a couple ways to do it under the Goal 5, as well as agricultural mitigation. What we tried to do there is provide an opportunity to be creative and flexible, and let the county use judgment on whether they think that the package brought forward is the right one. So again, with flexibility comes risk, right, and uncertainty. If there's anyone that disagrees, we also wanted to make sure that there was a clear and objective, we call it a safe harbor, that if the applicant did this certain thing, and that's the payment item, really items 2 through 4, on this page, and similar to the in the agricultural piece. But if you do these, you're guaranteed, right? There's less flexibility, but there's more certainty in that instance. And the value of doing the Division 23 piece, the Goal 5 piece, is that you could do either one. You could use the discretionary item, the flexibility to account for something maybe no one's ever thought of before, or you could use the clear and objective, very straightforward, aware process that guarantees that an applicant and therefore the county decision will be compliant with the rule at that point.
That actually took us longer than 30 minutes, but I think we covered a lot of things.
Sorry.
I know it, if it's okay, Chair, Stephen, I will get off of screen share. And, Stephen has some maps that I think could be really helpful for the discussion. And then, several folks have traveled quite a ways, and it'd be great to have them, share. It's not formal testimony, it's just whatever you think is good for the discussion would be helpful. There it comes.
How's everyone doing?
Good, Stephen.
Great.
Great. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Look
If
at
you
that map.
zoomed in a smidgen, it'd be helpful.
Well, okay, so Tamara, I don't know where you want to start. I guess, you know, we mentioned the KV lines and the transmission lines. John Jennings, thank you for providing the map that you did. I'll show that here in a second. It looked like when they did their mapping task, they had a little bit more robust transmission line shapefile than what I did. I've got pretty much to the same thing that they did. These are the KV 69 greater than 69 KV or greater in Morrow County. And then just to give you, so more than a I guess let me backtrack here. More than a presentation, this is kind of just going to be a little bit of just a show and tell. You've heard a lot about these, you know, corridors and this and that and a buffer, and just to give you a visualization of what some of this stuff looks like. So these are the KV lines. This is what the 10-mile buffer looks like in Morrow County with the KV line, with the transmission lines.
So by contrast, there are several other land use permits that we issue that require a half-a-mile buffer. This is much larger than that. So that's what a 10-mile buffer looks like.
And I know it's probably hard for you in the room to see, but the dashed line around here, this is the Morrow County boundary. Let me, dear, your map
And showing the
map.
corridors and showing John's map, I think would be helpful, Stephen.
Yeah, let me bump up this boundary a little bit here. You're put me on the spot to map in front of people, and it's always unnerving. Okay.
Stephen's a perfectionist, so to just show you some ideas is not his preference, but I said, don't worry, we're not gonna exactly map an entire project, but we'll show you some of those attributes that would have to be mapped.
Yeah, so
And
this
again, yeah, some of the data we don't have, like we don't have the cultural archaeological data.
Yeah, so this is the map that was provided by John. You can see they've got a couple off to the west here, or to the east, I'm sorry. They've got a couple more transmission lines that I didn't have access to. And the pink, they're this potentially ineligible area. This is a clipped area of the 10-mile buffer. That's what that's representing for the most part there. Let me bump that back down. And if anybody wants to see something, just let me know and I can pull it up. We talked about the solar potential in Eastern Oregon. This is a statewide raster file here. There's a lot of stuff on my computer right now, so it's hopefully it doesn't shut down on me.
That means we have the 19% or greater solar capacity.
Yeah, so the yellow is representing 24 to 25. The orange is representing 22 to 24. So everything, like John mentioned, east of the Willamette is within that 19, greater than that 19%. Let me turn this off and not turn it back on again. Let's see, moving up. Tamara, what the Columbia Valley or Columbia
Yeah, the AVA. Yeah, let's show that.
Real quick. So it is a substantial impact to Morrow County. It's pretty much the entire
think
north
AVA
portion
is
of Morrow County.
High value.
High value, yeah. So again, everything in the AVA becomes high value farmland for purposes, so that means
Even can you overlay the 10-mile boundary over that?
that's just one additional layer, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's almost the entirety of it.
Almost every place we've permitted solar to date. And that's a
So
pretty,
here's-
that's why I made my little comment that it's not a super scientific designation. Most everything else that you see is really like soil classification.
Is there a way we could address that? Because this is hypothetically saying that we could have like wine grapes just south of Ione, and that's utterly ridiculous. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
Not happening, so why?
It's from a 5th generation farmer here.
I would love for that land to be really high value. That's not what it is, so.
Yeah.
What would be the means? Would it have to go through the legislature to?
I think so.
We need a little tweak at the
Yeah.
legislature.
And actually, sometimes when you go through a strategic tweak, not huge stuff, you might have better luck with doing that. But it has a pretty significant overarching impact on anyone wanting to do solar.
And I have a nicer AVA map. If any of the commissioners would like it, I can email this out.
Oh.
I think it's got a little bit of definition. Again, it's probably hard for you guys to see on your screen there, but
Dugan and John both have their hands raised.
Oh, okay.
I'll give Dugan a chance. I've said a lot already, but Dugan's been very.
Okay, thanks, John. Dugan.
Hey, everybody, Dugan with Pine Gate. And also sorry for not dressing up. I'm going to a Italian thing later tonight, so I'm wearing my Italy jersey. I just wanted to comment just because you can see we our project's on that map, and I've spent a lot of time looking at these different maps. I'll say that at least for the AVA, that is for the Sunstone project, that is what qualified quite a bit of our acres as high value, and that's actually the main thing that pushed us, in addition to some water rights, that pushed us over the edge into the FSEC territory. So I think that's an unfortunate thing, because I think this effort did really kind of come to a bit more of a balance on you can be on high value if you do these extra steps and if you limit it in some ways, but because the FSEC standards remain, a lot of these projects won't be able to go through this pathway because of where the FSEC standards are. They'll go through the FSEC side of it. But yeah, and that's where our project is. So I think that's interesting. I'll say, just from a larger perspective, it took us about an hour to get through kind of the background of this rule. And I think it is pretty complicated. So I think it'll be pretty interesting to see what solar developers choose. Is it I hire Elaine or someone like her to go through the 38 old process and get me a goal 3 exception? Or is it that I hire Elaine to go through the new process? Elaine will be very busy, but to kind of, because I think some of these, as John was saying, have become more objective, and I think that was the goal. But at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that's still subjective. So there's just not going to be an opportunity for someone to say, draw a circle on a map and say, this is where you can go. Yeah. So there's always going to be that subjective part to it, which I think will just kind of be a balance for developers if they think they're going to have a better shot, either proving that they're in the low conflict area, or if they want to spend their time proving that they don't actually impact the goal 3 standards. I guess what I'd ask of, the people here thinking about policy is that just even if Morrow goes through goal 5 and kind of sets up these areas, or goes through the kind of an individual process, that the projects that go through the old Section 38 version are not considered lesser, because I think it's more of a question of, do I think I can fit into this low conflict thing, or do I think I have a better shot of just proving kind of old school that for many reasons that I should get an exception to the goal 3. So that's one thing. I guess one map, and I don't know if you have this, Stephen, that I'm looking at. I can also, Tamara, if you allow me share access, I can use the Aresta tool just to show where some of
Okay.
the connectivity lines
Uh,
are for the
Before you
habitat.
do that,
Yeah.
before you do that, Dugan, Stephen, I just asked him to pull up the ODFNW, is this the it's the Oregon Priority Wildlife Connectivity, is that, do we have the right map? Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Just-
Yeah, it's just not showing the connector lines.
Oh,
which are
I can,
kind of
I've got
more
that
of a-
one sec.
Oh,
That's the map I was looking for anyway, Tamara.
Right there.
So,
oh,
yeah.
excellent, okay.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so
So we
those
call
connector
this
lines
the,
are permeability lines.
Sorry, what
Yeah.
was that again?
And
Oh, no,
a
this is just-
permeable, this pathway between the existing habitat.
Oh, that's the light green.
Yeah, it's a statistical model that picks those out. So that doesn't mean that they're quality habitat. It means that they just provide a pathway for wildlife, right?
I see, to get from one.
From one
grazing
red
area
node
to another. Yeah, okay.
And
So
it's terrestrial wildlife, and as well as like birds and fish, so.
So the red
Okay.
outlines are the current, I believe, county and
Projects.
FSEC solar projects that we've got. So they're,
Mm.
looks like they're avoiding most of that priority stuff.
Yeah. Okay. That's what you wanted to show, Dugan? Did you want to show something else?
yeah, because that's one where it's like, there's a lot of lines and there's a lot of hexagons in there. And I think that will kind of come down to, you know, as a county, how you want to, I think, you know, the way it was expressed, I think in the presentation here today is great. Like if that is the process where because it looks at the base of it, looks like a lot of the county will be a no-go zone. But if we can do the thing where we do a little walk of it, and we're like, well, this really isn't great habitat, and you're not really impacting it with your project, or you're going to have like a little corridor in the project to allow things to go in between. Like, I think that's a good solution. If it comes to you need to do like 3 years of wildlife study, then that's going to be where it becomes a real barrier to go through this process. So I think it is about the implementation of those rules where I wonder, is it going to be easy or is it going to be too hard? If people are just going to say, you know what, I'm just going to go through the old process, or I'm going to elect to go to FSEC instead. So I think that's the balance that has to be reached here.
Yeah, and from a mapping standpoint, I think there's some certain things that the county can do on like a macro level. But a lot of it really just boils, it's site specific.
Yeah. Jeremy, from ODFNW had, please, yeah.
So I think just as an example of how we walked through this in the rule, we did that based on current experience through a couple different FSEC projects. We've gone out, looked at these connector mapped areas on the ground and talked about avoidance. And I think John mentioned, most of these do fall within corridor, stream corridors or canyons. When you get out on the ground and look at these lines, typically it's areas that you're not going to put solar panels anyway. And we've just asked for fencing exclusions to still allow them to function as the habitat that they're modeled. There's been others within existing projects that you get out on the ground and we've realized that the model erred. And we just progressed forward with the project as the original design showed. So far we've been able, in about 4 or 5 projects we're working on right now at the state level to work through PWCAs with some pretty simple modifications.
So how would that look if, I still think a countywide goal 5 exercise feels daunting, but what if a developer came in and wanted to designate a project area goal 5 significant? I would anticipate that they would work with you in advance, and if they boots on the ground saw errors, they could work with you and you would come up with mitigation areas. But how would that be a variance to that standard in the rule then?
There's
Or
language
would
in
it
the
be the
rule that-
mitigation program?
Yeah, there's language in the rule that allows, if it can't be mitigated. So if it can be mitigated or
Then
in
mitigate.
consultation with ODFW, that was intended to be the flexible path forward if.
You wanted
On the
to
ground.
make sure there was opportunity for project level refinement,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Done in conjunction. I didn't know Jeremy was there. I owe him a phone call. I lost my phone at the Shutes County Fair last week. So that's why I called you back, but I knew you were there. But the point is, yeah, I mean, you can, the intention is, we have a sense, but if on a project level, on the boots on the ground level, shows something a little different, then that can be accounted for.
And I would say if the county wanted to go through the goal 5 process, Tamara, as an agency, we would make every effort or work with the appropriate consultant to go out and make that evaluation ahead of time. Those could be pre-evaluated as part of the area creation within a goal 5 process as well, because then that certainty would be in place.
So I have a question for Stephen. Could you bring the map back where you had potential eligible and potentially ineligible? Because to me, it sure looked like there wasn't very much that was eligible at all.
1 second.
You mean the ABA?
No, this one.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, we're not.
I think is your pink label right? In your legend, the solar siting eligibility, I think it's flip-flopped. No?
No, that's the ABA.
Is that the ABA?
That's the ABA.
John,
A lot of it too.
Okay.
yeah, a lot of it's, so.
That's the ABA, yeah.
So I've tried in the past, I've had some younger Stephen had some data retention issues. So I've lost my I've gotten a little bit wiser in my age. I've found some DEMs and I've been doing some mapping of getting the slope and the oh gosh, Elaine help me. Aspect.
Yeah, slope and aspect.
And I can bring that high value stuff back as defined in whatever.
Yeah, this is actually a really good one. So the green.
Just let me show you here. I'll show you. This is the map
Yeah.
I'm talking about. I created this back in 2017. This is something that I did for Carla. It showed, I believe, not the high value soils, but the land that met that definition. Let me see if I can scroll over here.
Of high value.
Yeah, let's see here. So land that's in an exclusive EFU zone, no more than 3,000 feet above mean sea level, and an aspect between 67.5 and 292.5 degrees, and a slope between 0 and 15%, and located within the Columbia ABA. I have to recreate this shape file here, this peach color, and then put that into the high value soils and get kind of a sense of kind of a sort of maybe recreate the map that John did and find out some of it doesn't make sense to me as far as why some of this land would be potentially ineligible because and John, I'm not calling you out here.
Oh, it's fine.
Don't take offense to that. So it says here, land shown as potentially ineligible likely include land zone for forest use, sage grouse habitat, which the ODF guys in the room, maybe I couldn't find any data in
There is no sage grouse habitat in Morrow County.
Okay, and then the priority wildlife connectivity areas seemed very minimal. So I was trying to figure out why some of this land. I mean, there's a lot of irrigated ag in this area, and maybe that's where it's coming from.
I think it's that. I think it's topography, slope has something to do with it, and I think it's the AVA. And maybe I don't know, there's an awful lot of federal land or non needed land in that vicinity, maybe a little bit.
So I've got, let me pull that up for the room here real quick. Let me take.
Do you remember when you exceeded its legislative fix to get out of the AVA for high value definition? They did that.
For transmission rights.
No, it was for solar, but it took a little fix to carve them out of the definition.
Oh, that was your project, Kevin, is your finance director. That's right. Oh, in Umatilla County.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. But
so the shape file is
discussion, I think that needs to happen.
But that's also a federal recognition, isn't it? The AVA, it's just state.
The federal AVA could stay in place. But the high value farmland definition in 195
To tie it.
could be modified.
I see, got you. Yeah, I see. Okay. Yeah.
So along with the municipality boundaries, which I unfortunately I forgot to put on this map, the gray areas here, those are lands that are zoned other than they're non-resource lands, so they're not EFU, they're not forest use zones, they're rural residential, general industrial, those types of lands. But I'm still, even with this map that I did, and maybe I don't think I did it wrong. I was fresh out of U of O and should have been pretty smart back then. I'm pretty sure that I mapped the slope and aspect and all that stuff correctly. I'm still just struggling because when I look at our high value, oops, when I look at our high value stuff, so this shapefile here shows lands that are less than 15% slope and greater than a class 2 soils as non-irrigated. There's a lot of that available land in the north end. I mean, you can see there's a lot of irrigated ag as well.
It's not 1 and 2, yeah.
Yeah, it's not 1 or 2. This is like, I think this is all class 4 up here in 3 Mile, class 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Observation.
So, yeah, let's, please, yeah.
Well, just related to the AVA, its coverage in Morrow County, it does cover the northern half of the county where all the transmission lines are. So in effect, these streamline rules aren't really going to benefit Morrow County.
Yeah.
Because
I agree.
all projects are going to be tripped up by the high value designation under the AVA.
Yeah.
And the AVA has nothing to do with soils. It's just elevation, slope, and aspect.
And a marketing tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or irrigate.
Yeah.
It doesn't even think about could it be irrigated or not irrigated. It's just this layer. So most projects are going to be kicked to FSEC in your county.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the county should advocate to change that. And I think, you know, DLCD is a topic that was raised during the RAC. And it was kind of tabled for further discussion because the RAC was had so many topics to address. It was just too many things to add. But I think in the end, your county is just one of many that are affected by this. So my personal opinion is they spent a lot of time with these rules, but not many projects are going to benefit.
We've mapped the AVA, and soils have done this for it's Hood River. The AVA goes all the way to Hood River, Sherman, Gillum, you know, Umatilla. It affects that, and into Washington and Klickitat, where like it's our largest concentration of renewable energy, and where we have the most projects that are either operating or being permitted, and the best chance for us to you know keep electricity rates down for our ratepayers and everybody, and especially Morrow County. I mean, there's you have an energy community because of the Boardman coal plant, and because of it closed down, the census tracts around Boardman coal plant give an added incentive for those projects. That's why Dugan's there. That's why Emanate's there. Wheat Ridge, all of those projects have an added incentive from the federal government that is expiring, and we're all looking to permit our projects really quickly and start construction so we can capture those benefits before that they sunset under the one big beautiful bill is rapidly sunsetting us. But Morrow County is one of the very few energy communities in Gillum County. So all of Gillum County and all of Morrow County are in energy communities. But that is besides that in Centralia and Washington and the very small census tracts in Centralia where you really can't develop renewable energy, you're in a unique county to offering a lower cost of energy, subsidized by the federal government, but only for a very short period of time. And right now, with the rules that just passed on July 4th, we need an expedited permitting path. This, and when all of John and everybody and Duke and everybody who participated in this process, us included or whatever, like this would have been a wonderful tool, but the ADA is absolutely undermining like the ability to use what everybody worked so hard for like 16 months.
Can I just tease out a question?
Brian, Matt?
Yeah, we're here, John. How you doing?
I thought I recognized your voice. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, you bet.
I just can't help myself, but energy generated here is not for Morrow County. It's exported.
Not necessarily. Absolutely. Actually, on the contrary, right? You are the largest load consumer in the Pacific Northwest and the only growing load rapidly. And although let me
But
just
is
tie
it
back
going to filter down to like mom and pa who live outside of Hefner? Their rates are going to lower if we build more.
Haven't gone up as much as they would have
Okay,
otherwise.
and that's what's been explained.
I'm going to put my Robert Eckenrode hat on for a second, and I'm just going to explain to you, like, because of Robert Eckenrode and what UEC's done to build all of the transmission, right? The way that they are able to artificially, not artificially, keep UEC ratepayers, the normal ratepayers, like in their main rate base, is because they build all this transmission for all of these projects, and they're charging transmission rates for everybody that's wheeling over it. Wheat Ridge wheels over, all of their projects wheel over UEC. Like the Nolan Wind project in Umatilla is if it gets built, it'll be built by a UEC transmission line, like Passage in Morrow County. The One Energy project will use UEC transmission lines to get there. Everybody's willing to get to McNary or to get to Amazon or whatever. UEC gets a wheeling rate off that, and that's how they keep all of their other, that's the source of income that keeps all the electric rates for everybody else low.
And it's only the wheeling rates that keep our rates low. That allows, that's
It allows that other revenue to come in to keep Umatilla Electric customers' rates low. And there are all other benefits to Columbia Basin customers too as well. And just a note, like UEC and Columbia Basin and all the munis and PUDs or whatever do not have to produce their or share their transmission lines. So there are other 69 kV transmission lines like that power the town at Hebner that we're sitting in. They're just not on the map yet. But they're out there. Yeah. But yeah, they're
Off grid.
so we need, there are other lines and there are other areas, but yeah, I mean, it's not just for the Columbia Valley or the Willamette Valley customers that are keeping power rates down. Like this is a unique opportunity that will expire. And Matt has a couple slides to talk about expiring tax credits and what creates the urgency. And this is why we need to fix the ADA like ASAP. And we have a short session coming up in September.
So I want to, because Chair Sykes asked me to sort of manage this part of the work session. How about this? We're bumping up close to an hour and a half. I'd love to see the slides you have, but we have some folks from the farming. We have Morrow County grain growers on the call, and we also have Larry. I'd love to hear from you all about like how this affects your industry, or if you are prepared to have a recommendation on what option the county should follow. If you want to just think about it, that's okay too. But this isn't just about advocating for industry. My job is to balance.
No,
right?
by all means. Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to share your slides now and then we can,
I'm done, Tamara, so.
okay, thanks, Stephen.
That was a good show, Stephen.
Stephen, we've mapped all those and your data looks correct to us, like on the slope aspect, everything, and matches what we have.
That's always good to hear. Thank you.
Did somebody mention the actual sunset date?
I mean, Matt has slides right now, but like the sunset date, we'll go over these slides. So if you haven't started construction by July 4th of next year, 2026, and the map.
Okay. Thanks, Darren, for giving me a minute to talk. So my name is Matt Hutchinson with Emanate Energy. I just want to talk a little bit about context of federal tax incentives for renewables, because it does have to relate to streamlining projects for permitting, as you guys are talking about today. So passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act in July 4th essentially is sunsetting tax credits for renewable projects, wind and solar projects. So the section 48 of the act dealt with reducing wind and solar projects. Energy storage is treated differently, and those tax benefits will continue for the foreseeable future under the existing legislation. So that's the key date. The other thing that affected renewable projects was an executive order of 14315, and this targets renewable projects in 3 different aspects. First is it's going to redefine the definition of safe harbor. So what a project has to do to qualify for its tax credits. There's been long-standing guidance on that from the IRS. That's going to be rewritten, so that's expected coming here on August 18th. So that would be kind of industry really looking at that. The other one is stricter guidance on foreign entities of concern. So this has to do with where equipment is coming from. So basically reducing reliance on equipment from China, essentially. And the last one is it directs the Department of Interior not to make any federal actions related to renewable projects. So those decisions will be pushed to a political person to make those decisions. So it essentially halts development on federal land for renewables. Or in this area, some wind projects per se might need like a core permit for water costing. That would also be difficult in this case. So, and then the next thing is aligning all these things up. So a project has to start construction within 1 year of enactment of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So that would be by July 4th, 2026. And from that point, it has 4 years to finish. So sometime in 2030. So that's the kind of the target that most developers are gonna be looking for right now, is to start work by early next year, finish it within 4 years. That way they can claim the full tax credits for under current legislation. The other alternative, if they don't start construction by July 4th of next year, would be to finish construction by December of 2027. So those are the two paths to qualify.
But if you haven't started by July 4th, 2026, that's not.
Well, it depends on your project size. If you're a smaller project, you could realistically build a smaller project in full. So it's realistic. So the key thing is energy buyers, so utilities, or the General Electric, Pacific Core, all the data centers are being looking to take advantage of this small window and secure contracts to buy power at these rates that still have tax benefits. So this is going to be a big push right now to get projects contracted, signed up, and start construction by next year. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on the counties to improve projects to move forward fast, because there's billions of dollars on the line, frankly, for these projects. And those projects, those savings will get passed down. This is kind of like the cycle passing down to ratepayers, right? So we have the demand for energy will continue to grow. The utilities out there have regulated procurement cycles. Those will kind of go at their own pace, which is 2-year cycles. PG is being really proactive, and they just said, we'll take whatever you have right now. There's this really unique.
Just last week,
Because they realized that.
while still in an RFP process, they launched this 9/11 because the urgency is there.
Yeah. And so, because those utilities and energy buyers realize that there's a small window, and if eventually, when the tax credits, all these windows pass, they're going to have higher energy rates. There's going to be a market correction. That market correction will be passed on to ratepayers eventually. So moving fast really matters, and the timing is the essence. And it's like kind of the industry's in kind of a frantic mode right now.
Matt, do you want to define, just to make clear, like what the ITC value is real quick and why it's higher in Morrow County?
Yeah, so as Brian mentioned before, Morrow County is unique because it's adjacent to the retired Boardman coal plant. And so that was under previous legislation, the Investment Reduction Act, that was designated as a energy community, and you got a 10% adder on your investment tax credit. So if you had domestic content, you bought your equipment in the US, you were a renewable project, and you were the energy community, you had a 50% investment tax credit, which is a lot, significant.
So take $100 million solar project, which, Dugan's project, 1,200 megawatts is probably about a $2.5 billion project. So you get 50% of that $2.5 billion project. Like, most of the costs are actually eligible back there. So, it's huge. And in the Pacific Northwest, like I said, it's only Centralia and Morrow County and Gillum County that are eligible for that 10% added boost. And that's why you're seeing like all of these like solar projects that are in permitting or in development that are right now in Morrow County. And also, adjacent in Gillum County, you have like Avangrid, repowering Shepherd's Flat. You saw them repower like all of their wind turbines to capture that ITC again, or the production tax credit, because production tax credit that wind is taking advantage of is also sunsetting so as well. But
So that's 50%,
your capital investment.
it's reimbursed?
It's reimbursed 90 days after achieving commercial operation.
And think about it, those credits are really passed down to ratepayers by reducing our power price that we sell to off takers. So it's kind of a pass.
Okay, wow. Okay. So, I know I still want to make sure Larry and
Okay,
Greg are, no, but don't leave yet. But I have a question. So if you are recommending what we do, it's not a guarantee to go to the legislature to tweak the ABA piece. But we could, and maybe that's something you want the county to do,
Yeah,
or maybe you want to lead the charge, because we don't have lots of folks floating around who have time to go lobby.
This is something, we're members of Renewable Northwest. Hopefully we can work with them on this, not speaking for them. But if the county is interested in doing that sort of quick legislative action, then you can take advantage of these streamlining rules that are in front of you. Because right now you really can't.
Yeah, but you would probably recommend that we retain section 38 and adopt section 44, and then allow maybe it's for self-preservation, is to allow individual projects to come in under the goal 5 process.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, okay.
There is a quick fix that could happen in the short session in September
Okay.
to the definition of high value. It is a very minor tweak, and Elaine can tell you all about it. But like we could push for that in the short session, and like John, DLCD, Renewable Northwest, Diane is on the call too as well. Like there is a short, quick fix that we could do in September.
So if you just communicate with the county about that, then the board as a policy,
Yeah.
body can decide whether or not to take a position on that.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's good to know that you're pursuing that.
Okay.
Really helpful.
Great. Hopefully it's good
Yeah,
content.
no, it's really good.
Okay. Let's stop sharing here.
Okay. Larry, so what do you think about the wheat industry? Do you love it? Do you hate it? A little bit of both?
Rain is steady.
Same.
Well, this is the first solar related work session I've ever attended.
Okay.
So I'm learning a lot
Mhm.
and just trying to listen. I don't have much more to say at this point, but if the county commissioners or the planning department would ever like somebody to evaluate a site or just provide his or her 2 cents worth, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Excellent. Okay.
I can vote, I would.
Volunteer.
I mean, no, that's why one reason I'm glad she put it together, she was it with multiple people there. And I mean, I would like to see a written analysis from you.
Right, so what would be helpful to me is if there was a specific site or area in mind, with your specific questions, and I could go and look at that and just provide you with my assessment.
Okay. So that's super helpful on the individual project basis. One of the things that floats around my brain, and I think it's been a topic at the rec, was what's the cumulative impact of this? So on the books, it's still accurate. Last year we had 17,000 acres of dryland wheat alone. Sorry, 23,000 acres, 17% of all the dryland wheat in Morrow County. What does that look like? What does it do to the industry if that's double? And maybe that's a question for Kevin Gray. And that's also why Pine Gate came up with this mitigation plan that would invest in crops. So that almost $11 million that Pine Gate will fund to the county through that ag mitigation program. And hopefully we can tap you into being on the advisory committee for that. It has to be spent on projects that would foster or enhance that whole dryland wheat. So improvements to North Lex elevator or moisture gauges that NRCS or SWCD could use, that sort of thing.
I'd be glad to do that.
Okay.
But the mitigation formulas have been established.
In this process now they have been, yeah. The money we have, it's different, but our hands are still tied. It's a different formula, but similar to what John said, he came up with a similar value.
Well, maybe I can work with Kevin Gray and all of you folks.
Okay.
Do you want me to talk for a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah, so, yeah, if, just in general, yeah, the mitigation, mediation money, that Pine Gate has put forward, I mean, that will be a big help, for us to mitigate some of the losses. But I think the biggest thing is, as we look at it is, and just for everybody's information, we're a co-op, and so we're owned by the farmers who utilize this company. And so, their feeling is that, we don't want to keep an opportunity that individual farmer may have to upgrade, his life because of the funds that he may receive from a solar project. But at the same point in time, we're cognizant of, the land that it's taken out of production and what it means for this, stability and the future of the company. And so I think we're walking a real fine line, from a producer standpoint. As we look at it from a company standpoint, it really, makes you think about not only, okay, do I have the current volume to do a project at North Lex, a grain project that, I think a lot of us who've driven by there before at this time of year when we got close to 1 million bushels of grain on the ground, you look at it and say, wow, we really need some storage space out there. But do you really want to go out and make that investment knowing that there's these acres coming out of production? And so that's the complicated nature that it adds to it in terms of what we do, the decisions that we make as we go forward, and then trying to keep an eye on not only the here and now, but what do things look like a year down the road, 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road. And so it's just trying to keep it all in context. And running a business is hard enough the way it is, but then you put into account the projects and the projects that maybe are on the books that we don't even know about right now. And it does make it hard from a decision-making standpoint. And but trying to look at it from the perspective of the producer as well as the company and the future and the projects that we know we need to do today, but are we going to need to have that down the road? So
I think that's really helpful.
hopefully that is.
I think that's really valuable. I had reached out. There's some folks who couldn't attend, but trying to get a broad perspective. So we weren't only hearing really from the development community, but thanks for loaning Elaine to us because she makes all of us a lot smarter. I want to share, if you didn't know, the Hermiston High School Ag Issues team, it's what used to be the debate team. Their topic this year was they were the pro solar and the anti-solar. It was, and I went like at 6:30 in the morning one morning to listen to them and gave them some land use little tidbits, but they actually won state, and I was trying to figure out if they won at the national level. They did an amazing job, and they're really talking about a lot of the issues we're talking about here. Not so nuanced on the land use piece, but I think they did a really good job. It's not an easy issue, and it really underscores, I think, what Larry and Kevin just said about, we want to allow those individual farmers to make those choices, and they did. Anyway, I think if you Google her and put it on YouTube, it's there. Yeah. What else?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to talk about like where we got to today, and it's a
Yes,
big number.
please do.
I just want to clarify, like 17% of all of the dryland wheatland in Morrow County got permitted in the last year.
Not permitted in the last year. It's either permitted, constructed, or in the queue.
No, it's permitted or constructed. Stuff in the queue is included in that total.
Okay, so I haven't looked at that
Permitted
number
or-
with
Okay.
what's her name from or with the county grain growers.
Mhm.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it, but I have
Okay.
I could look at the acreage, so I can get, it's a big number.
Does that include wind projects?
No,
Yeah,
it's
it's
only
not,
solar.
it's not an insignificant number by any sense of the word. So
Yeah.
No, I'm totally agree with you. Not an insignificant number,
Oh, yeah,
but
Steven's gonna pull up
if
this.
it gives you any relief or whatever, we've never, like in the state of Oregon, there's never been a power purchase agreement that's been executed for more than 300 megawatts at any one time. And that's right here in Morrow County. That was the Wheat Ridge project where PGE bought 100 megawatts, 200 or PPA. No, sorry, 350, right? And the 30 megawatt solar project in Morrow County, and then the 20 megawatt battery. That was the largest PPA that I know that's been executed in Oregon. So Diane could probably tell you how many megawatts we have operating in Oregon, but like these projects, Sunstone 1200 megawatts, Wagon Trail 550, like the Sunrise is 800 or whatever. Like we've never purchased that much or bought that much over time. Like, I don't know how many megawatts are operating in the state of Oregon. Like maybe it's 8 gigawatts or something like that. Like to think that, and that has taken since like 1999 when State Line came online to where we are today. Yes, we have the incentives in, we had House Bill 2021 for 100% renewable, but it's not going to happen overnight. And though we have a permit boundary for a solar project that might include all of these acres, not all of it is going to be built. So when you see these numbers of permitted boundaries, not all of the acres inside of it will be built. So it does kind of can feel like it's a lot, and it is a lot. I don't want to understate that.
Say as a percentage for permitted acres. So if we had 10,000 acres permitted, how many would you think would actually have solar put on? As a
You said like
general.
80% of your permit.
So it could be, it all depends. Like some developers will include more land depending on their topography, if it's less consistent. I mean, if it were a perfect flat square south facing or flat land or whatever, you could put in 5-6 megawatts depending on your technology and your module, 5-6 megawatts per acre. That you could get in there, as you get into diversity and different slopes and you can't use it all and 100% utilization, and you start to spread out, that can be anywhere between 5 and 8 acres per megawatt.
So Stephen's showing, this is the story map that
Yeah.
Stephen's created. It's on our webpage. So that's the approved site boundary of solar is almost 18,000 acres.
Okay.
And
Between the
that
two
doesn't
projects.
include,
Yeah,
was
between the
that,
two
Stephen?
between the two projects, Sunrise and Sunstone, you're looking at, and that's the what's the word I'm looking for? So they come in and they say their project boundary is, let's say for easy math, 1,000 acres, but they might microsite within that
Sure.
1,000 acres,
Sure.
and then
Sure.
so their
But-
boundaries can change. This number will constantly be changing.
So
But
that's
for
already-
purpose, yeah. But there's actually more than that, because there are a few on the hopper that aren't in this yet.
Sure,
Yeah.
but just take these two, right? You're almost at 18,000 acres, right? Those two projects, 800, 1,200 megawatts between Sunstone, Sunrise, very convenient names, right? Your 2,000 megawatts times 6, that's 12,000 acres. So if they were to build them out at 6, I'm not saying that that's the ratio that's going to be, but like somewhere around there. So just ballpark. So of your 18,000, right, Stephen, that's 17,997 are permanent acres.
Yes, sir.
So 18,000, so 6,000 of that may not be used. If it goes up again, maybe 5,000 of the permitted boundary isn't going to be, could remain in farm ground or otherwise. The other thing I like to talk about is like a lot of this, because the goal 3 exceptions have been a lot tougher, to get that keeping projects in an ag use. And I think you've seen maybe on the planning commission before the board, you saw the Passage project for One Energy, and they're utilizing grazing and vegetation management with sheep. If you go back in the history books, what this land was used for prior to dryland wheat was actually sheep raising, when Oregon was like the capital of wool raising in the world. We are bringing projects back and working with Cameron Krebs and other key landowners and Cunningham Ranch and Steve Corey, and those folks, like we can bring sheep grazing back to what it was and how this county was established as an agricultural industry, and still keeping it. Now, might not like that for the wheat growers and might not like that either, but it's also keeping that ag use within the county that historically was here before dryland wheat.
Well, can I make a comment? I think one of the things you say, well, it may or may not, but you got Kevin up there. He's got a lot of assets that he has to deal with. And he's got to make a lot of asset decisions on where and so it may or may not doesn't help him. He provides all the support services for the wheat growers. I mean, storage, chemicals, machinery. So he's making decisions on over the next whatever years,
Yeah.
That's different from an individual farmer
Right.
making a decision
It's
to a person who's doing it.
I know it's hard to do.
And I got a question,
Yeah.
Cameron, before on the mitigation. I'm still not clear. Did she mention that mitigation similar to Sunstone could remove goal 3 requirements?
Yes,
Is that what she
the
said?
goal 3 exception requirement.
So explain kind of clear, I guess, and I'm still going through, has the Sunstone mitigation plan become kind of a template on how to do these? Can we expect more of it, or are there other avenues it's going to be taken?
I think we can expect more mitigation, but we go about it differently. So it's now not what the developer in the county figured and worked through. It's what's prescribed in the new administrative rules.
Oh, okay.
But as John pointed out, he ran the numbers and came up with a fairly similar number. So it might be that under the goal 5 process, if it's the community benefit, we have more flexibility. If it's the ag benefit, we might have a little bit less flexibility of how to spend those dollars. And with ours, we the county agreed to focus those funds on projects for the wheat industry. And Stephen now has the total number. So now the projects we have, if you're in the queue at any place, it's now 30,000 acres. So Larry, how many total acres of wheat do we have in Morrow County?
Roughly 185,000.
Okay.
And there's a couple more projects too, Tamara, that I haven't added to the dashboard yet.
Which, is that the new 6,000 acre project?
I think so, yeah. I don't even know the name of it.
Anyway, so that number's higher.
Yeah.
So it's probably almost at a quarter of the dryland wheat. That
The Tower 1 and Tower 2 and Boardman Solar, those are wheat, right?
True,
Yeah,
but they're also
Boardman
like-
Solar's that's no longer a.
That project terminated.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. And then the one in red, that's in a light industrial zone.
That's Port of Morrow property. Yeah.
Yeah. So commissioners, I know, thanks for inviting us to have the work session. We have a great group of smart people. What other questions do you want to ask? And are you ready to give me some direction? Or are you still thinking about things?
I'm kind of digesting it. I know what I've got. So I would wanna, didn't you mention that we're gonna revisit this at some point? Or was this the only work session we're gonna do?
So far, that's the only one
I
we
can
have
do the-
we have scheduled. And we have until the end of the year, sort of. If my at least initial recommendation was to opt in or not opt out, so we have
Yeah.
38 and 44, but we might want to do a resolution so it's abundantly clear that 44 won't replace 38. I think that's the technical piece we need to do. So we have both of those, and then just sort of see what happens either in the short session or if we get some applications under the goal 5. I'd love to look at an individual application. It's pretty daunting for me to pause 2 FTEs to do the countywide goal 5 process because we have other business to do, frankly.
Okay, but the way I understood it too is, okay, when do we have to make our decision?
So the rules become, section 44 becomes automatically effective January 1 if we don't take action.
So we have till the end of the year to make a decision on what we want.
Yep, we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's any more information. These people that like Larry, maybe might want to.
You want some
But-
more time to think about it in
No,
one session?
yeah,
isn't
no.
it?
Before we
For
make
sure.
our, I guess we're planning, when do we make our decision?
Sure.
When do we have enough information that we feel confident? Is that
I-
fair to say, Gus?
I think something that I would like, if Larry was willing, would be to perhaps go on a walk around and do an assessment of how much of our high value land is only high value because it's in the AVA and how much of a difference, that would make. Because if we could have that assessment and say, it's gonna, I don't know, triple the acreage that we could do under a goal 5 plan, then maybe that makes that a plan worth pursuing. If it doesn't really increase it by a lot, I mean, I assume that it would. Again, that map was ridiculous. It's not full of high value farm ground. It's not.
Because of the AVA mostly.
But
Yeah,
because
yeah.
of that, so that would be something that I would be interested in seeing, because I recognize it's a lot of work. So I want to see, is this something that will actually pay off if we pursue a goal 5 plan before we go there? But perhaps, if you guys have a map already and you're like, hey, this is what it would do, then that would be great too.
We do. We can
Oh.
provide a map.
So let's connect and then maybe we'll schedule another work session after we digest this and then give Larry some time to think and give us some advice. I mean, he's a super smart guy, but if this is the first time you got to participate, it's a lot for any of us to digest.
So one more quick question. Yeah, when we make our this takes effect in January, no matter when we make our decision, correct? Or does it take effect immediately?
So if we don't take, it's that double negative. If we don't opt out, then section 44 becomes effective. But the way the rule is constructed, and I was just looking at Elaine for confirmation, my comfort would be if your intent is to implement 44 and 33, I think our resolution, and we might need to do a formal legislative fix that says we're recognizing both.
You might, yeah, let's talk about that, because I
Also, we
think
can
you
talk
also
to
might
Dan
want to
about that.
express the recognition that you're open to an individual goal 5
Okay,
application too. So there might be some nuance there. Might be
okay,
good to loop back with Gordon and John on that too.
okay. And then also Dan,
Yeah.
our counsel.
So we're under there's no advantage to us acting sooner.
You're right.
Good,
Give
good.
us some time.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm still digesting the new goal 5 piece because it's a whole new goal 5. So it's not like any other goal 5 resource.
So I just had a question. So is it really a possibility that you could change the high value farmland designation within the ADA? Do something less valuable?
I think
Is that a possibility or is that not enough?
With legislation, you could.
You'd like to what?
With legislation, you could, without the AVA designation, it would just revert back to arable soils, most likely.
The rule structure, the whole solar siting rules look to 190, chapter 195, ORS 195, 300, which was the definition of high value that was adopted for measure 37. And so it's included in that. And so that definition in 195 is a lot broader than the definitions we see like in 215 or even in the ODA's definitions. So
Yeah, I think there's a couple, I
it's
think
a
there's a couple
policy.
different ways to skin the cat.
discussion, yeah.
I guess I'll also just say that some of that land will remain high value farmland if it's irrigated.
Oh, yeah.
And is that Steve Cherry in there?
yes.
That's what I thought. I recognize his head.
He's back
Be
here.
surprised at who's in the room if you don't show up.
The sheriff's not here though, John. Okay. So we'll do some homework and anybody who wants to like share a proposal, like maybe target this fall so it's not rushed, unless I really want to think about whether or not we need to do like a formal PAPA code amendment so it's abundantly clear in our codes. Maybe you and John and Gordon and I can put our heads together about whether or not we need to do that so we have both options. And then of course, if Renewable Northwest in the industry wants to pursue that legislative change, that definition change, keep us in the loop. We might not be the only county who's interested in participating in that. And I don't know where the board would land on that, but you can always ask for support.
Yep, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thanks for giving us 2 hours. Thank you, everyone who traveled.
Questions.
Yeah, input of,
I haven't gone up good for now, I think.
So, but okay, myself, are you kind of?
I think so. I need to think about it myself.
All
So,
right,
yeah.
I just like to thank everybody.
For sure. Thanks,
I think
everybody
you
who
put
came.
together a
Yeah.
very good, work session. I'm glad you all came. It's very important for Morrow County.
Yeah.
Really, I'm really glad we heard you.
Yeah.
So, looking forward to it.
Thank you. Okay, now you have it. Thank you for the last 2 hours.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My calls.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Only long time. Work session back into order. Next, item up would be Morrow County capital improvement. And so I'll leave that one off since. Listening to the long range strategic plan and then some other things that have been coming up, we've been pushing for. Didn't have anything in front of you guys, so. What I did was I went out and I read a crap load of different counties, different places. And I took what I would like to see for Morrow County. And of course, this is a suggestion, of course. But I tried to mix what I thought was the good parts of capital improvement plans that I read other places and, put in, some representation. Of course, you have our advisory committee. I want to get representation from different sectors there, staff, electeds, and we have an at-large. So, I mean, this is what I'd like to look at as I'm not wedded to this. I think we needed to get something on. And get this down, so get some plans out there, well, it says, where are we gonna go with them, where are we gonna, what needs to be done, prioritize. And work with Kevin to get the, and Mike to get the anticipated revenues to match up with, our plans, so. That's what this is. It's, it's a time to discuss this. I want to hear what you guys think of it. Burn it, throw it down, tear it down, whatever. No, but if we do burn it and we say, I don't like any of it, I think we need to somehow get something rolling, And so anyway. Can we go through it step by step if you want?
I would just say, my first thing is if you're gonna burn something down, I think it should be required to have a replacement, so.
I was gonna say that, I didn't want to.
So I'll go ahead
I was
and
gonna
say,
wait till somebody said, okay, I don't like this at all, then I would say,
Show me yours.
we're used to. Yeah, so, like I said, I'm not okay with that. Sure, put it what you want, let's get it the way we want it, no? And what we think, that's my thought is, and that's what I did through this whole thing is get it to where we want it and where we think it'll be effective. I'm big on, public input, we don't necessarily, however we define public input, whether it's staff or, whether we, the advisory committee holds, hearings and has, or not hearings, but town halls or whatever, has people come in. Because, we lived through citing the circuit court, and, I keep looking back in my mind is how could we have rolled that out different? And I incorporated some of that stuff in here as, on trying to get a good rollout, get citizen involvement in the beginning. And we did on the circuit court. It's just well, anyway, let's not go rebeat that horse. Anyway, so. What do you think? What's your thoughts, guys? And Kevin, please feel free to weigh in. Matt, anybody, you guys, you guys feel me involved too? No.
I appreciate the effort and really like a lot of things in here. I do question a couple of pieces of it. I'm not sure if we need an advisory committee. Right now, the structure of this is really not advisory committee. It's just a single resident representative, which is good, but I mean, when you have an advisory committee, usually you have appointed positions and there's more, development in that. Also with the advisory committee, I mean, that's generally looking at public goods, public impacts on different things. Generally, when we talk about a capital improvement plan, this might be where we need to separate and have some little more understanding. We're really looking at the current and future governmental assets, generally speaking. So we're looking at, new sheriff's office, new courthouse, redoing the old courthouse, and planning for the future on those types of things. Does impact roads, but we have an advisory committee as required through that be a component of this. And so one of the things that I had shared previously was just setting it up as a policy to provide internal staff people to do it. If we have a BOC represent on there, because you do represent the people. And then we generate that, bring it to you. We can have a public hearing or even an open house if necessary to engage the public so they know what's going on and adopt it. The current structure talks about meeting quarterly for the meetings. And quite frankly, it's kind of like this capital improvement should be more of a budgetary process where the last 3 months of a year, a calendar year, you work on it, update it, review new items, and then we present it to the budget committee, and which includes you, to incorporate the coming year into the budget process. So we'd have to have that done, by early March or so in order to how soon would you want it done?
Well, new finance guy, that's great.
I'd like to have it earlier. I'd like to have.
Well, so the timelines are absolutely finished.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'd like to have it like we take it, we bring it to you in January, we turn it over so we can update it. The first year is going to be the big haul, getting it all in and taken care of. After that, there's updating and taking care of it. So I'm just a little bit concerned about an advisory committee. While I am an advocate for representation on a lot of ways, this one I'd say is more of an internal staffing type of thing that can be judged with the policy. Also, advisory committee, as soon as we put that brand on it, it's going to make public meetings, public hearings, and I don't usually see that as a requirement as we develop capital improvements until you have the final package in to prepare it and get it ready. And so those are just a couple of the items.
Well, my response to that, it doesn't require anything on that. So the advisory committee allows board to get different ideas from different sections. I mean, if you look at it, you got board commissioner, the assistant county administrator, director of public works, there's 2 staff people. And so you have 2 staff people on there already. And then you have 1 BOC member, and then whoever wants, maybe I would like to see the BOC member or get elected on there because they're the ones that have to use all these. And the BOC does not have to follow what the advisory committee tells them.
Oh, definitely.
It's just, get some input on people, on what people are wanting from their government, so it's not a top down, this is what we're gonna do. A select number of staff members dictate where everything goes, when it goes. And I know you've said, we've talked about this before, it would have to come before the BOC for approval, but the projects that the staff, and I'm not saying anything else, the ones that they want, well, they'll be real easy. The ones they don't want, well, there'll be all kinds of problems. Now, what are you gonna do? See, this way, I believe in input, especially like I said, after what we just went through, where possibly the fair and rodeo should have been involved earlier. We didn't get the city out. And, some of these other, and some of the projects we've been talking about need to get the people who, they need to get them in early. If we're gonna do something with fairgrounds, if we're gonna do something with this building over here, we need to hear from the, people who use it and the people who are going to use it in the future. We're using it now. Not 2 or 3 staff at the top telling everybody this is what's gonna happen.
Well, and I agree. I would separate that a little bit from the capital improvement plan. I would say the capital improvement plan sets the pegs in order. And as we get close and then have approved revenue streams and approved considerations and budgets, then as part of the project management, we're reaching out to stakeholders and other groups to say, okay, we've got this, we've set it for this. Let's talk about how the fairgrounds specifically goes through. That creates a little bit more direction. I mean, we have the projects outlined as approved, by the BOC. And then we engage with those public members as we go through. I mean, I think looking at a very input oriented strategic process like we just went through, and then having the capital improvement plan being an internal embodiment of some of those directions, allows us to be concise, keep it on point, and really take care of the needs of the county. I'd be interested to say, like, as we were to do it, even in committee with BOC and other ones, we're going to have to be looking at it very holistically and saying, what are all the assets of the county? What needs to be done? And I in a logistically based CIP, yes, there's going to be some ranking that, but it's not like we're going to not consider the needs of the public health building and Boardman. We might say, here's the priority for it compared to the funding sources, but
for instance, I don't interrupt, but for instance, we had an executive session a couple of weeks ago, and all of a sudden we're on path to build a brand new auxiliary circuit court Boardman. That didn't go through any kind of vetting process with anybody or find out if that's what the public wants. And it was just put there, okay, let's get going on this. And that should have, to me, that's, oh, well, we found a piece of property, so let's build it. Or I don't know where it came from because or why. The cost factor, do we need it? Do the public want it? All these things was not taken into consideration at all. And this is what this would try to find out what people, do people want to move the fairgrounds? Do people want, what do they want to do to this building? And have the BOC involved. I mean, or, if you don't want an advisory committee, just make the BOC the advisory committee. And we go out, we find out things, we come up with a list, prioritize it, and do it that way. And we bring in people from staff, we bring in and talk to them. We maybe bring in the fair board people, we maybe bring in all these people, see.
it's, it's definitely, the BOC has within the right to do that. I think when we talk about a capital improvement plan, we're looking about known items and, specifically, the Boardman Health Department. We're gonna have to do something with that building and either do a new building.
I'm not disagreeing. I mean, sorry to interrupt you. I mean, if you start talking about individual projects and say, okay, we need this project in this group right now, we could all come up with things that have to be done. We're talking about the process, get it prioritized, get it scheduled, get it funded. Not an individual, not drag up an individual project and say, we gotta have this done. And this plan will not get that particular project done. I think that's not been, that's not the way this is set up. It's to handle any project.
Okay, so, in my experience, putting together, capital improvement plans, we generally start with the known items. And we allow the elected officials to engage with, new projects. The executive session for the Boardman, location was to say, all right, do we have any interest? It wasn't to say, let's do it, but we had been approached by Boardman on it.
Well, if you'd have gone out and gone for that, that would have been a green light for you to go for it. If we'd have said yes in that executive session, that's what that would have been.
I wouldn't have taken it as green light, but,
I think I would prefer we not talk about things that happen in executive session.
Okay.
Outside of executive session. Thank you.
So generally, when I look at capital improvement plans, we look at known structures, known deficiencies.
Well, let me address what he said.
Yes.
I don't think that was an allowed subject in executive session. That should not have been talked about in executive session. That had not, talking about a new capital improvement project in the county is not an executive session. Anyway, okay.
I would like to hear what Kevin thinks about the timeline and what he thinks would need to be done in order to make a timeline be something that's functional. I prefer not have to go find a new finance director.
I think the phases look fine. This needs to be done by December, January, end of January at the latest, to be included in the budget. Yeah, March, we've got a budget. We're reviewing the totality of it. So it really, like I said, end of January, much beyond that, I'd be really uncomfortable.
Okay.
So I don't know, if that's, shorter duration for the phases or just shift everything back. But my other comment that or thought that stood out as I was reading through this was that wow, that train of thought jumped the track right as I was
And it'll come back.
I appreciate the need, desire to focus on, capital infrastructure. For sure, those are the biggest, most impactful projects with most significant capital needs. But and I've said this before, it's half the picture. We have a software, implementation project that's right near $1 million right now. It's competing for those same funds. And I feel like whatever the structure is, whether it's an advisory committee or board of commissioners or the budget committee or whatever, at some point, in order to put a budget together, I would need to know we would need to have a clear communication on what's the prioritization of these projects within the frame of reference of all of the capital needs for county. Does a public health building then take priority over, I'll just go back to software projects, that's the biggest one, right? Does it take priority over that? Does it, do we need to look at, diverting funding that would go towards road equipment, which, we have a substantial capital acquisition plan. Some of those funds are from the landfill fees or SIP funds for their capital equipment. So those are competing for the same dollars. And I'm concerned that if we just focus on the infrastructure piece, I'm still not going to have a clear direction on, well, how does that fit into the totality of all the capital needs? So, does would every equipment request need to go? No, I don't. I'm not saying it needs to be
That level.
that level, but there's got to be
Maybe a threshold.
some iterative process, right? Rather than saying infrastructure, if it's a capital project over $1 million or over $5 million, probably lower than that, but or just acknowledge, I guess, that maybe, you know, regular replacement of existing, you know, equipment. I'm thinking mostly of roads because, you know, get a couple of graders in there and you're well over $1 million. You know, do we forego replacing worn out or aged equipment? Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yes, I think it makes sense. That
I just ideally, this provides, you know, whatever this process ends up looking like. To get there's some sort of iteration that happens before the adoption of the plan.
by December.
Yeah, and this is, you know, typically this is an ongoing thing, right? As soon as you adopt one, you open the, you know, there's a process for making a request or something like that. So I have one last comment, and with the, you know, I don't want to beat a dead horse or dying horse, but on the advisory committee, I just wonder if there's a role for the budget committee to play there instead of another committee. Ultimately, all this ends up back in front of the budget committee. Maybe there might be some benefit, and maybe we need to gauge interest, but there may be some benefit with having the budget committee a little bit more engaged in the capital planning process. It just seems to fit well, and the representatives from the community. I looked at the so you had to hear the scope of work or the responsibilities. That may be a little bit, you know, more than some of those. But I don't want to speak for them, but I would wonder that might be a little bit more than they'd be willing to take on. But it just seems like it might be a good idea if they were engaged in that process. Then when it comes time to do our formal budget hearings, and we can make those go as, you know, smoothly and streamlined as possible, having had them engaged earlier in the process, which was a pretty significant sentiment that was expressed by the appointed members of the budget committee this year to keep those, you know, as streamlined and short as possible.
I agree with, you know, whether or not those individuals would have the bandwidth is a question only they can answer, but I love the idea. I mean, we have really excellent representation on there. That would be an interesting way to go about that.
Anybody else have any comments? Jeff, got anything to say?
Oh, I don't know. I get what you get going for, Kevin, with the budget committee, but it's engaging them, you know, additional time. And like you said, it's streamlined process. I do, you know, I can appreciate Dave wanting to get the citizen input, but are they going to be looking at and know what the real needs of the county are? I mean, do they know what needs to happen over the original courthouse, you know, the seismic upgrades, or, you know, I mean, one thing I hear repeatedly is, you know, they need to redo some steps and remortaring some things. That never keeps getting done. I mean, those types of things, you know, and maybe, I know Kevin's gonna say that's a maintenance, that's not a capital improvement thing, but you know, maybe if you go on totality, maybe it reaches the $1 million threshold, you know, different things that need to happen. Do they know the minutia of that? And they may bring forward other things that aren't of the priority to maintain the asset that we already have. So, one of the things, you know, as I'm sitting here thinking, you know, obviously we're not gonna make any decision today, but several months ago, Matt had brought forward a framework. I'd almost like to see them side by side to see what the differences are, what you presented, what Matt had presented, and combine and see what
take a paragraph out, put it paragraph in.
Well, I think, well, let me address the advisory committee. That's really all county people.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
It's not like you're going out
No,
and getting people from the community and saying that
I
don't know, experience or, these
Because-
are all county people who are familiar with the
No,
needs of the county.
No, you're right. And, I know that, and Matt, he had a, list of people, the discussion at the time was, how many should that be, and should there be BOC representation and different things like that? But,
My, can I just clarify, when I was talking about the budget committee involvement, I was just saying that there should be probably a role there, and that what's defined here is probably too much, for them. I know that they're, some, City of Umatilla, they do like an information education session with their budget committee where they take the proposed projects or projects that, are being considered to be included for the next year or the capital plan, and just have a session to get feedback or, from the budget committee to inform them what's going on and what, potential concerns, if any, that they have. So, yeah, I wasn't talking about it in that level of detail as it's defined here, but
so your idea would be is that you'd have come up with the plan, kind of run it by the budget committee between, so if this got the advisory committee, let's call it, came up with a proposal by the end of December, you'd like to have something no later than the end of January, so first middle part, January, throwing out dates.
do an education session with the budget committee.
And if they throw up any red flags, that gives time. to
Which,
finish up.
that's something I talked about wanting to do with staffing, so it's be a challenge, but yeah, that's what I'm talking.
I think what you just laid out would be something that I think would be a great path forward, Jeff.
And, so that would, address, some of Dave's, community engagement that the budget committee would help serve as some of the, community involvement with what we are proposing.
Yeah.
Dave?
Well, I mean, I just go back to all the things and.
I'm not saying that.
Huh?
We need to have plan process. We do need to get started sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
I think also we're on the time frame for not running off yet.
This ad hoc, well, let's grab this. and let's grab- You don't like that comment?
Oh, no, I just said don't put too much weight on it. Much on planning plans.
Okay, so we can push it out till March.
No.
So we already, we have a very similar process, in place, and that's with the FTE request. Where we start that in October. And, officials and department heads submit their staffing change requests. And we have the staffing review committee, which I guess right now would be just me and Matt, but, and the HR director. And we, review and dig into those and follow up and then bring a recommendation
Yeah.
to the board. And then if the board approves that, then that's what I include in the budget.
See, Jeff and I went through comprehensive plan, redoing the comprehensive plan, the economic component for Morrow County. We didn't, it was still a planning commission, but we brought in people from every element of economic in Morrow County. We brought them in from irrigated, we brought ag, brought them in from industry, we brought them in from, tourism. And when we developed that plan, we brought them in and listened. See, that's why I envision this is, bring in some people. Or you would have, if they sent it to you, that would be part of the prioritization process that this advisory committee uses. See, they're they're gonna take that information in. You say that they submit those to you, right? Is that what you said? Their staffing,
Oh, well, they submit to HR. They submit them to Human Resources and then the review committee reviews them.
so how would that be related to capital improvement?
It says it's a similar process.
Okay,
I was just purely talking about the process.
okay. All right, okay, well, it's just, broadening the information that we have when we make decisions. And not having just, let's go do this, let's go do that, and that's my thought. I just think we need to be able to get input on things to prioritize. And like I said, this committee is all county, depending on who we put on at large.
And Chair, I just want to affirm, you and I are in full agreement that we need something and need capital. It provides a vision and direction for staff and residents to rely on. So as we look forward to it, I just need to kind of, because there's another portion that was described was, like the funding from communities and that. And in a comprehensive plan, you do want the whole community because what you're doing impacts land use for the whole county. Opening up to the whole county for ideas on capital projects is a double-edged sword. I mean, the biggest thing we had during the strategic plan was a desire for a county rec center, more trails, and a North End Park. Things that I'll tell you generally would be lower on the list for priorities compared to the other things that we have, but should be considered in some way. And so that's one hesitation about throwing it wide to allow anybody in the county to submit a capital
You don't
improvement
have
plan.
to take it.
Well, we don't.
I mean, we didn't devise our comprehensive plan based whatever the industry came in and told us.
Of course.
But the more information you have, the better decisions you make.
Mhm.
And if you limit and you don't let information in, and you just have a very select few making all the decisions, I don't believe that's a good way to go.
It's representative government. You're elected three of you are elected to make those
I
decisions.
know what representative government is.
Yeah.
Matt. You don't have to explain it.
So, I mean, but that's kind of where this is. I mean, we're talking about, and generally capital improvement plans look at existing items, roads, equipment, buildings, and how we need to do it. And then from input from our representative, elected leaders, we add additional projects based on discussions that you have.
Not the way I've seen it here, not the way you've been doing it. It's been like, you brought up in an open meeting, let's move the fairgrounds to the.
I had made mention that they had brought that idea.
I know that it was out there. You gotta remember, I go home at night and I hear this. And they're coming apart at the seams. What do you mean you're gonna? Whereas if you have something like this, you get them involved early. You don't spring it on them and say, gee, I think, a couple staff people think we should move the fairgrounds out to the mill site. Well, you get that information and then the advisory committee, don't be afraid to get information in from the public. Don't be afraid of the public. Get the information in. You don't have to do what they tell you. Then you prioritize based on everything you get. And then you present it to the BOC. The BOC makes the final, and your staff, your staff member are part of the decision-making process. There's 2 staff members on here plus you. So, and there's one BOC member and whoever the BOC decides to appoint. You see, there's plenty of staff input on this, but I'm not afraid of hearing information. That doesn't bother me to hear from the public. I'll hear it. That doesn't mean I'm gonna do it.
Mhm.
But just find out you know, what's going on. You know, just like you just held these, strategic plan, you know, you didn't have that, you didn't have to listen to what the people, and you're not gonna go out and do everything they tell you to do on it, right? Same thing on this, you don't have to do everything, but you get, I feel the more information you get in, the better decision making you can make. Especially on very important things, what's gonna be built in the county, where it's gonna be built, where are we gonna put our assets?
So
Very super important.
I think for the moment, we're at a relative impasse. I think we've got what Dave has proposed and what Matt has proposed. And for the most part, guys, these are almost the same. Like they are very, they're very similar. And I think I would personally like a little time to go through both of these and potentially the next time that we talk about this to be able to come to some sort of intermediary agreement that perhaps satisfies both parties. And I think it's actually a lot closer than the tension in the room is making it feel like it is. And so I would just like to suggest that perhaps we go ahead and, unless there's something else that we need to discuss right now, go ahead and let it go until the next time we meet and perhaps have something that we could agree on in the middle. Because I'm looking at these and they're very similar. I think we can come to something that addresses both the need to have that public input while maintaining sort of that smoother process of internal decision.
Well, I don't think tension is something to be avoided. If it's part of the process, you know, when you make important decisions and you talk about important things, there can be tension, and I don't think that's a bad thing. And I don't gear everything I do to avoid tension, because then I think you make bad decisions. So a little bit of back and forth between me and him, you know.
We arm wrestle.
Yeah, we
So,
can have a lot of big boys.
So, just for consideration, I mean, we talked about this back in February. It's been on the back burner. We want to get this done. And, that's the thing I think is, and we need to have this documents to help us go forward. I would offer that either we put it on for the next regular session or embed that into, the work session afterwards, just to finalize that, and, that would be August.
Okay, yeah, no, what are we gonna do, both walk in here with these two plans and then, well, I mean, what's the process gonna be to
work
assimilate them or pick mine? I think the easiest thing, hey, don't want tension, we cannot do away with all the.
Or you can pick mine.
No more tension.
So, you know, and just so we can make a determination, I've, thinking on this, you know, one of the things that a good CIP plan has and, is acknowledged in both of the processes is a ballpark budget target. Doesn't need to be too hard science, but it has to be reasonable. In just talking to some consultants, they can come in and over about a 6-week period help us do that. And so we can, you know, get a list, open up 2 weeks, see if people come in with ideas. That might be a little bit short for this first time, but there is a process we could do it. But I'd like to get something in place by 1st of September so we can do this, so it'll be an effective part of our budgetary process. So just
I mean, I mean, I agree, we need to get something, we need to get something in writing and a plan in place soon. I'm just trying to figure out, you said, okay, let's come back at the next meeting. What are we going to do? What do you guys want to do when we come back the next meeting? Have one of you guys draw up the plan? You know,
So we're gonna have 3?
Well, I'm trying to figure out it's easy to say, well, let's put it off and we'll come back and we'll talk about it some more. What, you know, what's the process when we all get back here again? What are we gonna be looking at? Two plans sitting on the table? And argue about it some more?
if I could make a suggestion, I mean, if we do it a work session, we come back with these and we sit down and we pencil some things down. We take highlights. I mean, there's a few decisions that are really determining, are we doing this in an internal policy or advisory committee? A question. Kevin and I can sit down and figure out the schedule that's workable for the county and for budgetary process, and just let you know how that is. Neither of these really address that issue very well. Mine, the one that I have for the policy base is still pushing it out to March 1st. The other one has it. So we can come back with a schedule of what it should be and do that. And pretty much just, I think, anticipating the, advisory committee or policy staff. And then public engagement. So those are the two questions. And we can work on those two things after some work session and have something 1st of September to have the BOC consider as a body. We as staff and the BOC. If you want to designate someone to craft it. Yeah, well, I mean, during the work session, we do. And,
Okay, I see.
and so we do that, and if we want to
Don't
designate.
have something to come to the next work session that's ready to be, to go. Well, you said bring it back to the next meeting.
If we wanted to bring it back to a next meeting, I would have a couple people designated to do that. BOC member, myself, or whoever it applied to, and take the two plans, make some determinations, make a recommendation to the full body.
We tried that once, Matt. It didn't work.
So, yeah, so, I'm open to whatever the Board of Commissioners decides.
Well, I can tell you, I think you guys are you know where my major interest is on this. I think we need an advisory committee similar to what we have here, as far as the timing that they were talking about, and most of the other. Because I think prioritization, getting the information and prioritizing it for the BOC to make their decision is a key things. Those are gonna decide what happens. The rest of it is process and not as important.
Clarification on the comment that you said, are you expecting, so in the last meeting where this was discussed, I thought one of my takeaways was that the BOC had the preference to prioritize projects.
They do, but there would be everything.
Oh, just, okay.
Is a recommendation.
Understood.
See, and then if they bring it in, the BOC can sit down and go, well, we want number 3 moved to number 1. See, it's all, no, this is, the advisory is totally advisory, just like every other advisory committee. Like I said, when I first started this, I sat down and I found 11. I think there's even more. I mean, the planning commission is advisory committee. And I mean, I had a citizen come up to me the other day, he doesn't like, he didn't like it, he's confused about what's going on at the transfer stations. So he went to solid waste advisory committee and talked to them, see, and worked it out fine, you see. So I looked at the structure and read just about every bylaws of all the advisory committees we have in this county. Some of them more extensive than other ones, because, that to me is the way it needs to be incorporated into our decision making. Because, it's done all, and everything else. But when the solid waste, the airport, the roads, they all come to us for final approval. Same with this. We're gonna be able to look at that. And, and if Matt's gonna make his case and, during the advisory, which one he wants to, he thinks should be higher and, and whatever one of you guys is on the advisory committee, you're gonna make your case and everybody's gonna have their input for the final, for the prioritization. Kevin, you're gonna give us, and Mike Norman, right? You'll give us input onto what's fundable, right? That kind of what the idea might be, but, and Mike Gorman said he would tell us what our revenue streams are coming up. And that's the work of here, but when it comes to the BOC, then they're gonna go, yeah, like I said, no, we'd rather move 3-1. We don't want 4 on there at all, we want something else. So in the end, it all comes down to us. We're not giving away any power. Zero power. All we're doing is getting more information to the public to make our decisions. To me, that's a good way to do it. A lot of times you get good ideas from them. A lot of times you get yelled at. But anyway. So what do we do? Me and Matt take another stab at it? Putting the compromise together? What do they do when the Senate and the House gets together? What do they call that? Reconciliation. You want to try a reconciliation plan, Matt?
Sure.
Again?
Sure.
Okay.
I would love to see that.
What we do? Yeah.
I think afterwards.
Okay. You fly on the wall. No, it's. We're passionate about what we got, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. So that sound like a consensus? No work session, back to the regular meeting, right?
Okay. Sounds good.
Sound good, you guys?
Good.
All right, so next up, what's next on our?
Birds update.
No,
To success and everything's fine.
We're transitioning. Unless Matt had something to add, this is more focused on the defined benefit legacy pension plan. Can you let me share my
You should be able to share.
So two things. We got the actuary's valuation report for the pension plan. The methodology that we've used is based it on the contribution rates as a percentage of participating employees. And so for fiscal year 2026, the actuarially determined contribution rate is 65%. And the estimate that I used in the budget was 54.5%. So part one of this is that's going to be about a $500,000 budget impact. And this is just more for information. There's going to be a budget adjustment that's going to come. My suggestion may be to take that $500,000 out of the $1 million supplemental contribution that is also budgeted. So that way we're not having a net increase in operating costs. But
How does that impact? I mean, that $1 million was to help.
well, so as I've thought back over this quite a bit, when we went back and we reevaluated all the assumptions that were used in valuing the pension plan, the ultimate goal is to adopt, and which we did, assumptions that allow us to make sure that we're funding the future and current liability associated with the retirement on that plan. And if we match or if we follow the contribution rates that are based on those assumptions, the plan's going to be fine. It is slowly going to chew away at the unfunded liability portion of that, which I think we chose a 15-year time frame to amortize that over. Don't quote me on that, but that seems to stick out to me.
It seems to me.
Yeah, so essentially that's gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine. I've been making the recommendations in the budget to, you know, make contributions where we have some surplus, and I'm not suggesting that maybe that goes away next year. I'm just suggesting that given the structural balance deficit that we had in the operating budget, that rather than pull that $500,000 out of contingency in the general fund, that we just reduce that supplemental contribution and adjust the budget that way. So.
Is this primarily because we found out that PERS did not return their investment anything close to what they expected to, or what is the shortfall here?
Well, there's a couple of factors. First, so this is a PERS. This is the county administrative plan.
This is the legacy plans.
This, okay.
It was closed 5 years ago, and we're just underwater on it.
Okay, sorry, I was
I wouldn't say
Underwater.
I wouldn't use underwater.
Underfunded.
I wouldn't use underfunded.
We have a plan to be funded.
We have there is an unfunded liability. You know,
Thank you.
which
which is not
to define that, if the entire plan were liquidated today and we paid out all the future retirement benefits just kind of back to today, then we would be looking at about, you know, it's probably around $10 million deficit. When you, after you disperse the assets of the plan. The likelihood that that would ever occur is, I'll never say zero, but it's quickly approaching zero. So bear that in mind. I think ERISA guidelines for multi-employer plans are around 75 or 80% funded for the total liability. Because after a while, I mean, you're going to be fine just because of the way the money compounding and investments work. So. But that was a great question to lead in. So the reason why the contribution rate increased. So we had a few, so market rate of return, like we're not, so the valuation is based on not end of fiscal year 2024, but it's based on end of fiscal year 2023. That's the valuation that it's always a year behind.
Okay.
So like when you read our audit financial statements for fiscal year 2025, the retirement plan valuation will be based on 12 months prior.
Okay.
It's just too much work to do, but and get it included. So the there was, you know, if you think back of what market conditions were, and there was a pretty significant downturn, and those market impacts even aren't all recognized at once. They're spread across multiple years so that it smooths the impact on the plan. So, you know, downturn of the market within the last 5 years is a big contributor. The other contributor is what we're going to talk about next. This is just, and I'll give these slides to Valerie so she can print this out for you. This is an impact on, based on the current budget and the way that these costs were spread, of changing from the 54.5% of wages and salaries to 65%.
Do want to just point out, I appreciate the commissioners not contributing to this issue. It's been here all never than 5 years, but hey.
And again, so I'll make these slides available for you so you can look at that. I'm not going to go through this one in detail. So the way that it currently works, the plan actuary determines the total annual contribution requirement based on the plan valuation. What's the total amount of dollars we got to contribute to that plan to meet our objectives this year? It was right around $3.2 million in our budget. They take that annual requirement and they're dividing it by the total wages and salaries of plan participants. And that determines the contribution rate, which came out about 65%. You may recall when Brent from Milliman, who's our actuary for the plan, when we went through and evaluated and changed those plan assumptions, he said several times that the county may want to consider moving away from doing this on a percentage of plan participant salary, and you're going to see why here. And then plan contributions are allocated to participants every pay period using that contribution rate, and those the plan expense, those costs post and wherever that employee charges their time to. So whatever department fund pays that employee, that's where those costs post, and it's a pro rata based on their salary. So
those look like great employees.
they are. They're kind of plain, but so here's the challenge. The plan closed in June of 2020, 2022 or 2020, 2020. So the base, because we're calculating the contribution as a percentage of, participating members, that participating members are never going to get any bigger. So, and this is an example. So if you had $100,000, spread it over 10 people, it's 10,000 a person. And then as you go forward in time, spread it over 4 people is 25,000 a person. Your total contribution is not changing, but your per person costs are, because you're spreading that same pool of costs over a shrinking population, right? So that's creating a bit of a challenge. So that's one of the other reasons why it went from 54 to 65%. Every time somebody retires or leaves the county and they're no longer, so that now we're concentrating that contribution over a smaller base. So if you take this to its logical conclusion, the last person working for Morrow County that's a plan participant, it used to be Lindsay, I don't know who's next in line before her, but that last person, once everybody else is retired, if we continue our current cost allocation methodology, then their labor overhead for just the retirement plan is going to be about $3 million in today's dollars. We can't continue this cost allocation approach because we're running into situations where we have we may have, and I'll just use, we just have 2 employees that are on the same grade, same step, same position, hypothetically same, and one of them may make their total cost of employment maybe $100,000 a year. And the other one, their total cost of employment may be $150,000 a year. And the only difference is this one's a participant in the retirement plan, and so this one's not. And where we can run into some challenges is the inconsistency between departments. And then obviously, as you run that out in the future, you can't keep using, you're increasing your department budget based on one person carrying all the costs associated. So and there's that last person standing, and now they're picking up the whole $100,000 cost.
So what happens when there's no person standing there?
Well, that's a really good question, and we're about to get there.
Oh, okay. Great.
So did I repeat this slide? So this is I'm sorry, the slide says current cost allocation. This would actually be the alternative approach. So it's not the current. So rather than basing the contribution rate or spreading this over only plan participants, this would be to treat it as just a general personnel overhead cost allocated across all employees in the county based on their total wages and salaries. And then we're looking at 27.4% of all employee total wages and salaries. That smooths it across the board. So one department is not necessarily carrying the burden I guess, let me back up. The other relevant point is this is a pooled plan. There's not an individual account for employees in this plan, right? So they're not just, their contribution isn't just for them, it's for them and every other participant and every current retiree. It's for the benefit of the entire pool. So that's one of the other reasons why allocating all those costs just to that person and their department is probably not the best approach. So an alternative would be to allocate it across all departments. And this is the rate that calculates 27.4%. Now, those planned expenses would still post where their labor is charged at. So in some departments that have long tenured employees, you would see reductions in their total expenditures and their budgets for a year. And in some departments that have a employee relatively less tenured workforce, they would see budget increases versus where they're at currently. And this I've put on this slide here. It's hard to get to exact dollars when you're using 2-digit percentages, so pretend that the budget net impact is actually 0. So the first column, this is based on, it's not based on our current budget, it's based on if we do a budget adjustment to cover the increased contribution rate and valuation and contribution requirement. And that puts the total at just over $3.2 million. And then what I did here was, well, instead of concentrating that and just letting the cost of the DB plan follow the participants, let's spread that over all employees. And what would the budgetary impacts to that be? So, for example, in finance department, with adjusting it to 65%, we'd be at 112,728. Under this alternative methodology, we would actually see about a 20% increase because we don't have Tammy and me aren't participants in the plan. So we'd actually see more costs allocated to our department. So where you see negatives, those are more costs being allocated than what they would be under the current plan participant methodology.
So Kevin, this is a dumb person question. I hope you forgive me for asking it, but what is the real functional difference? We're gonna pay it anyway, so why does it matter that it's spread out to be in different departments versus in one department when we're gonna pay it either way?
Well, number one, we have to allocate it because it's the cost accounting rule that we have to follow. Number two, you'll notice some funds up here that are restricted revenues. And there's some departments, so we see like veteran services, road fund, airport, dispatch, fair, public transit, and the impacts on those. So that's where they may have increases or decreases, and those are going, although they all offset each other, it shifts in some cases where restricted funds have been used previously to cover those costs. Now general funds would, or in other cases where general funds were used, it increases the burden on those restricted funds. So,
But if we did nothing, there's a scenario where all of the burden could be on one restricted funds.
Yes.
And then they're, okay.
Yeah. So this is really we have to do something. It's not an emergency, but we've got to work on a solution and get a change in methodology in place. I've talked with our auditors about this. They agree we have to do something because from a reporting and transparency a cost accounting perspective, we can't sustain the way we're doing it. And they agreed that this was probably the only alternative approach to doing that. So this was really just something I wanted to bring to your attention. And I haven't.
So the one there that stuck out to me was the park fund.
Mhm.
Since, traditionally it's always been grants and stuff, so this would mean that, Greg would have $6,000 to spend on the park.
Yes. I would say that so parks and airport, it would be there'd be more context if we look back at prior years. Because of realigning and the employees that they're realigned, that are maybe no longer, so historically, they actually had substantial DB plan costs allocated and charged to their departments. It's just with the community services administration department and Vince, where we, now in Sandy, she moved to finance and all those realignments. It's a young, low tenure staffing in that department right now. But yeah, that's exactly what it means.
I would say too, yeah, I mean, if you looked at the snapshot of 2 years ago for the road fund with this example, it would be much more impactful. We had a lot more people on the DB plan. And then right now we've got a younger road fund. So they are gonna pick up some of that cost. Technically, it'd be kind of the cost of the legacy road workers.
And if we put it off, it's gonna get worse, so.
One of the things is, it's the reporting, because right now, we list this on their pay stubs.
Well, yeah, I was gonna get to
Yeah,
that.
sorry, jumping ahead.
So also, and I've said this a number of times, the Parks Fund, historically, rewind 3 years. Oh, we don't take any general fund dollars. Well, that's just not true. It's absolutely false. They don't have their own IP, they don't have their own HR, they don't have their own accounting function. But it's important to try to allocate costs to, using a regular basis, and then that may create a scenario where they need more support from the general fund. And that is what it is. And we have better costs. The only workplace where that does not work is obviously.
What about the health department?
What, again, there's, significant turnover, lower tenured staff, so fewer participants in the DB plan. But that's covered with general fund dollars anyways. You can see the majority of the, the big impacts, most of it, I think, is probably constrained in the general fund. But there are some departments in there that, again, if they had a turnover and have a lot of newer, less than 5-year, 10-year employees, it's gonna impact them hard, but it's a single year impact.
So one question, Kevin, and I hadn't thought about this when we discussed it earlier. Is there any consideration of just having a separate line item that we, kind of like the $1 million that we're doing, that captures that $1 million and this legacy payments that we have to do, and kind of have a standardized for the DB contribution that's made? I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I know what you're saying. It's would be unwise.
Okay.
I mean, it violates cost accounting principles, but it'd be unwise because you're putting 100% of the burden on the general. And that's not
financial guy, and
that's a good strategy. So the last thing I wanted to touch on this was, and Matt alluded to it. Well, I'll put that other one back up there. That was I'll be front and center. Is so currently we print county's contribution on, as a memo on people's pay stubs. So, for example, if you're a defined benefit plan participant, as of July 1, you're gonna see, pension plan contribution or however it's worded, and it's gonna show 65% of your pay. And Mindy's actually already had some questions about this because
That's a significant number.
well, and it really implies, or it can lead people to believe, well, that's my retirement account that I'm contributing to. And while that's true, it's your retirement account plus the 120 other participants in the plan. And that money is not directly 100% just benefiting the employee. It's a reporting and a cost accounting function. And as you can imagine, 65% is pretty substantial. Now, the reason why employers do this, and I've been in a number of employers that have done the same thing, is to convey and help, provide a full picture of what somebody's total cost of employment and benefits and whatnot are. I think that in this case, we should probably, and I've talked with Mindy about this and Matt a little bit, we should probably discontinue that because as it can be a little bit misleading on what that actually is, in terms of, that's not a retirement account or an individual retirement account or
The
contribution.
65% is not going to.
Well, even if we change the methodology and spread it over everybody at 27%, now you have people that aren't even plan participants, that it's literally just an allocation of an indirect cost at that point. And has nothing to do with the individual that's working. I think we should take those memos off
The pay stubs entirely.
Yeah.
All of them or just this one? I don't know if there's a couple.
Yeah, I've only focused on this one. I'd have to look and see if we put the employer's portion on there as well. So thoughts, questions?
So this would be their budget reallocation stuff would be now or for the next budget year? Because again, I'm going back, I guess, to the parks. So, Greg has had an approved budget and has planned out where he's gonna spend. So now he has to determine where he's going to cut $96,000 on what he's going to spend.
Yeah, I would feel more comfortable with having this changed for the next budget. But if you think that it needs to be done,
No, the only thing that will need to be done is we'll need to do a budget adjustment to cover the
which we have,
increased contribution
Yeah.
rate for that $500,000.
we have to do that.
I don't see, there's not a, gloom and doom need to, address this today. But
That's good.
the cost allocation.
Yes.
What I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll need to do an adjustment because we're contributing at the higher rate already, so. Yeah, I don't have a, particular urgency to have this done and. I've got plenty of projects on the plate right now. This was just an awareness.
Well, thank you.
At a minimum, it'll be the methodology that I take in the next.
Yeah.
In the next budget.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it.
And just had to pull up, the other memo items are just showing what the county contributes towards mental health, showing other benefits, which I think still has a value in it.
Those are very specific too.
Yes, very specific. It would only be the retirement plan, and it's just one memo line.
Okay. Great.
All right. All I had. Okay, any more questions? Okay. And then we will call work session adjourned.